Good.
Oh shit, this guy's about to get slapped. Alright, greetings gamers, and welcome to episode 12 of the '07 Iron Podcast. Hope everyone's doing right, or good, I should say. I'm sorry I'm cooked. And for reference, I'm streaming live on Twitch right now, this podcast, so this should be interesting. Hopefully everyone watching the stream is gonna enjoy the premiere of the podcast featuring Mr. Shady Glade. Shady
What's
Glade, would you like to
up?
say hi?
Hello.
So tell me about yourself, Shady.
Uh,
Who is Shady?
yeah. So Shady. So I don't want to take credit for it, but I did bring clogging to '07 Iron. It's something I've been passionate about for a while now. Um, just kidding.
Yeah, I was like,
Uh,
what the fuck are you going? That's not, you're not clogging, dude.
nah. No, I've been playing the game since 2004. I primarily played back whenever like the HD remake came out. And like there was summoning and all this other jazz. I've been playing the game for a very long time, very passionate about it. Now I've had many accounts in old school's career, but the one that I'm currently working on is a maxed Iron Man, about 758 mil total XP, like over I think close to 600 days played at this point, and then yeah, so just super excited for a lot of the new content coming out as well with the new skill, possible new skill, and then
Nah, it's a new
the
skill. We can talk
new
about that
quest
later.
stuff. I think it's gonna happen, but yeah, we'll
Yep.
talk about that later. But yeah, no, I think now alone bringing clogging to the '07 Iron clan has kind of been interesting. I've sort of gotten into it a bit myself. It's been a little bit fun going for certain things. I don't think anyone. Well, I mean, the people might get close to completing, but just with the stream of content that comes out, might be difficult with the mega rares. But I guess we'll see. But yeah, that's a bit about me. Hopefully that made sense.
Dude, I just want to point out for clogging, Mr. Basilogist right here, he is 63 collection logs away from completing the log.
Which are like all third age pieces,
Oh,
right?
bruh, what the fuck, dude? No way I get that live on the fucking... What a joke, dude. That's number 3, by the way.
Dude, congrats, man. You might want to keep those for components in case, who knows.
Yeah, I'm banking them. Alright, sorry. Yeah, so he's 63 logs away from completing the collection log.
It's
Which
pretty
is crazy.
crazy.
That includes third age, by
Yeah.
the way.
That's like most of what he has left to get. I think I looked at his log. He has like stale baguette,
Yeah, he has
a couple
Baguette
other
left for
things.
other section. He has Inquisitor Mace for PVM section. And he has
Oh
like
yeah,
all the
he's got some.
raids.
Yeah,
And then it's just clues. Clues and raids.
that's crazy.
But I think I spoke to him a little bit. I think once he gets all the items except for clues done, he's probably going to burn.
I imagine.
Because honestly, like, I don't. Looks raw. I think if I was in that situation, I would probably burn as well.
Well, I mean, you
Because
basically completed the game, right? If he's completed everything other than those things, like what is there left to do?
he just, like, does clues and waits for updates. And whenever there's a new update, he does the update for Clog.
Yeah,
Like, that's literally nothing else to do besides that.
God, that's crazy.
Yeah, that's a little tangent there. So, let's go back to the main topic. So, what I wanted to talk more about in this cast is more about the new changes coming. So, firstly, the new skill, Desert Treasure 2 as well, that's coming out, and the items and rewards from that quest, which will be very, very interesting and a little OP. And then the overall power creep state of the game, where we see it in a few years, I guess, and discussions on that. So, what would you like to start, Shady? What topic do you want to start off with?
I mean, I don't know. We get freaky and talk about power creep and have people automatically hate me.
Well, they're gonna hate us anyway, so there's not much you can do there.
Yeah. I'll talk about
Um,
power creep. I mean, why not? I mean, like, and I don't think I think I have a relatively nuanced opinion about it, but um, I think it's people are testing out the new prayers and everything like that on the beta worlds right now, and some stuff is in a pretty interesting position. Um, I think as we've progressed as a game, the opinions have progressed in terms of like what power creep looks like and what people are interested in. I don't even know how long Twisted Bow's been in this game, right? But from its origin, that bow was completely busted. I mean, there's been so much content that has been restructured around it, right? So like the only reason like Mage Bandos is a thing is because they had to lower its magic level, so that Tebow couldn't just completely destroy it.
Yeah, I remember
Um,
that.
which, obviously I agree with, because if you're gonna have a best in slot bow be best in slot at literally everything, that's not good game design. So it's cool that certain things have sort of come out of inadvertent changes, which I think is also something that kind of has to happen. You know what I mean? The way that they pull things now and allow people to play with content pre-release, I think is good to give people a genuine idea of like what it's going to look like. And the other reason too is because, you know, like if you look at it, probably I don't know. I'm not gonna just throw numbers at a wall, but the issue with like new content, right, is that you sort of have to balance it around not necessarily the high level community, but like the giga gamers. You know what I mean? Because those are the people who are going to be able to break the game with it. So,
Yeah, but the issue with that is that Jagex is a private company. They're here to make money. Upper management and the executives at Jagex are only here for money. And for them, they don't give a shit if the upper level, the high level community is pissed off. If the
oh,
lower
for
level
sure.
community or the mid game community has more people joining the game for a specific update and their numbers go up, that's a W in their books. They don't give a shit about the high level community. And I don't
Oh, that's my.
necessarily blame them because if if it was any other company, like I'm thinking about a private engineering company or a firm, it would make
Mhm.
sense to do changes like this. You would bring a higher volume of players to the game, and you would make more money. Because let's be honest, me and you, Shady, do we really buy? Do you buy membership? When's the last time you bought membership with real money?
I'm actually weird.
You still buy
I
membership, don't you? God damn it,
yeah,
Shady.
I pay monthly, by the way, on two accounts, because I don't know. I just figure if they deserve my money. I spent half my life on this game. But anyway, don't use me as an example on that.
I mean,
I think
okay,
you're right.
I'll use
Majority of
myself as an
people.
example. Like, I
Yeah,
haven't
do it.
paid for membership with real life money since 2020.
Mm,
I've been using no 2020. Yeah, 2020. I've been using bonds ever since.
yeah.
And although it's still like contributing in terms of like making money for Jagex because it makes bond prices go up because I'm buying bonds, so people buying bonds for like OSR's GP are making more money, so there might be more incised to buy more bonds.
Mhm.
So it does contribute in a way to make Jagex money, but it's not. I'm not directly funding money because what else would I do with the money? Like I have one bill on my main, might as well just
Right.
buy bonds on it and dump it on the CC and shit. So
Yeah. No, I mean, I think you're right. I think obviously the money is the incentive. I think my point is that the balance of something has to come from all different levels of play, but 90% of the people who play are not in those upper echelons. So, and I would say that the people who are gonna interact with the spell book that could completely break the game is a relatively low percentage of people. So for me, and I've had this perspective from a long time, because like when old school first came out, the first air quote power creep or like new content to come into the game, the new changes was God Wars Dungeon, right?
yeah,
Um, and this game would be completely dead if the only bosses we had to kill was, I believe, Calfight Queen, Dagonoth Kings, and King Black Dragon.
yeah, that's all they had.
That was it. so So it's nice to see like it come out now, especially since everyone's like, I mean, because that's the thing when you think about it, right? As children, like half of us were chewing on our tongue and drooling because none of us knew like any form of mechanic, right? The biggest mechanic back in the day was click boss and hopefully you don't die, right? Like it was just a tank and spank. That was every boss. So, um, now that there's a little bit more of a spotlight on like doing certain things solo, since you do have so many Iron Men, I think in general, again, 90% of your player base are those people who just kind of interact with content at even if they play religiously at sort of a, casual level. I'm still one of those guys that, I mean, eventually I need to go back. I have a couple of items left to get at Zammy, but I just Staff of the Dead actually. Um, but for the longest time, I preferred the just like click under and say fuck it rather than doing the T-bow method, even though it's so much more efficient. And when I go back, I will end up doing that. But I think like everyone chooses to play the game in a different way. So when it comes to power creep, I think that there's a perspective there that, I'm depending upon what it is, I'm okay, right? These prayers are fucking busted though. Like, and I don't know how I necessarily feel about that because what's a T-bow's max hit in like max with dragon arrows? It's like 80 something.
It
I
depends
don't know what it's
where.
on.
Like in
What is it off
Chambers,
past?
it's like I think I hit a 96 with fucking amethyst arrows.
Well, yeah, Chambers. I think
Or
it works
94.
exactly.
Or
Yeah, it's
86.
like
Fuck, what was it? I don't remember. But it's
I think
high.
nine. I think 96. I think you're right. 96 sounds right for some reason.
Because
And then
the
I think it's like a.
Missouri VAMs, like everything's just
Mhm.
making everything hit harder and harder.
Yeah, yeah. So I can understand people's perspective of it's going to be a problem because I think I was watching a video. I think it might have been Sebe's video. I can't recall. Um, where talking about you're basically going to have to balance all the new content that comes into the game around the new spell book,
Yep.
which
So everything's gonna become harder if you don't have the spell book.
yeah. But I also think that from their perspective, they can sort of combat that. One of the benefits to it, and I think a lot of us hate chip damage, but the chip damage really is going to be the thing that makes it worthwhile to use in certain locations and not worthwhile to use in others. So while it is hellishly broken, and maybe shouldn't have the attack power that it does, right? Because that's I mean, I think it's just the big numbers that people can hit that people have problems with, which makes sense. Regardless of what the drain rate is, because it's bad from what I understand right now. I played around with it a little bit, um, but gearing on the beta worlds is actual. It's just bad. It's just so
Yeah.
bad. Um,
But I think the drain is not as much as a problem as people think it is. Like you either just flick more or you bring extra P pots and you ditch a couple gear switches for P pots or restores.
correct. Yeah.
And the
So
extra DPS you gain from the prayers, like it'll definitely save you time in the raid regardless.
for sure. Yeah, for sure. So I'm I'm cool with certain levels of power creep. I like the idea of getting a new spell book. I mean, I played one of the reasons I talked about playing during um, summoning was because I played during the original release of
Of summoning?
I did. Yeah, I
Yeah,
played
me
during
too.
the
I
original
played,
release of
but I was a
summoning.
shitter though. I don't think it
Yeah, I
counts.
mean, I I wasn't that bad, but I mean, I was pretty bad. But I also played during when the new I'm blanking on the quest that came out. I don't think it was Temple of Senstein. I don't remember what the quest was called that gives you access to curses. Um, but I do remember when curses came out. And here's the other thing too. Like curses when they were released in 2000 like 8, 10, I can't remember exactly when it came out, right? Whenever it came out, players were dog shit. And
Yeah.
that's the only other thing that is like a huge factor in how all of this stuff is going on right now because the issue is that we like get it. You know what I mean? Like when I don't know, we're just much more mechanically
People are much better at the game now than back
understanding.
then.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like back
So
then, no one knew what a tick was. It
exactly.
didn't make sense.
Exactly.
And
So
also,
that's
like back then, people were doing some crazy shit, and the crazy PVM feats that they were doing was like 600 kill DK trip,
yes.
which is like it's kind of cool, like good on you, but that's not really a flex of skill. That's more a flex of like endurance.
Yeah. I mean, I remember it like when you used to go to DKs back in the day, you just took damage from all three Dagannoth Kings until well, you took damage from two Dagannoth Kings until you could kill one of them
Yeah,
and
you
then
won't even
take damage
flick; you
from
just
one,
face
right?
tank them.
I don't yeah, I like as when we were idiots. You didn't even think to be like, well, I have a 100% deflection prayer. I could just if they're on a different timing cycle, I could just flip between them, right? Nope. The mage hits big, you just pray magic. That's it. So, um, that's what's cool. and that's I think Jagex's difficulty, right? Because the people who are at Jagex, not all of them are gamers to that extent. I think Husky, from what I understand, is pretty good. And there's a couple of other J mods who are like relatively high level in perspective of like what they can do PVM wise. Um, but for the most part, it's a bunch of people who can't even do TOB whenever they stream it on a Friday, which is not shit talking them. But again, everyone's
Yeah, but
just
it's
at a
also not
different
their
place
job
within
to
their
play the
account.
game. It's their job to develop the game, so they don't need to be
Exactly.
good. But you're right that
Exactly.
there is a lack of. There's only a few JMLs that got the Inferno Cape. I
Yeah,
know. I know Husky and Arcane have an Inferno Cape. I don't know about anyone else though. But that's
that's
an
right.
interesting
Arcane.
fact too to think about.
Well, because that's the thing when you just have ideas, right? If ideas are flowing and everyone's like, ooh, what if we did, 50% additional damage on your prayers? The people who actually kind of know the mechanics of the game and the high level of the game can go, oh, let's back
Yeah,
that
that's
up.
huge.
Because the numbers amount to this rather than this. So that's another thing too, is that for the longest time, if you don't take into consideration the Tebow, what has been the progression of numbers, right? Because for the longest time, I mean, I would say for like
Oh, you mean like the progression in terms of DPS increase every update?
yes,
Oh, it's
yes.
an interesting way to look at it.
Because for a long time,
Because you would gain
we've
like one or
been
two max hits per like small updates. Like the Zarad Vamps, one max hit.
Mhm.
The only difference was Missouri, that was like four max hits.
Yeah, with full.
Because you got like the full set, which was it was like +8 range
Mhm.
strength.
Yeah, something like that.
And
So
now you're adding like fucking +20 max hits
yeah, which
in
I
one
would
update,
probably,
dude.
yeah, I would probably say a little too much. Little too much. I like the idea, maybe they could supplement more with accuracy side and go for fewer number hits, right? But um that's the other thing too. It's like half of our game, the only time that you're going to be attacking something is when it's weak to the style that you're utilizing, right? So the only thing that comes to mind is full Inquisitor with a scythe on something that is still weak to crush, but the only way that you make it worth it is if you have full Inquisitor with a scythe on crush, right? Um, but yeah, my perspective is like you're probably going a little bit, you're jumping too far with the current setup. Um, and for probably a few years now, we've kind of been just rambling around in the same location, right? With like one or two additional damage every update, and then, well, not even every update. Like I would say every like year, right? Because how long has Next been out at this point? Like a while.
Like a
Um,
year and a half almost.
so you know, it's it's nice. Which something I wanted to talk about yesterday, which was when you're talking about game balance and how to do that in a relatively consistent way that doesn't feel incredibly broken. I think I really like what they're doing with Virtus, because it's a set effect. Same thing with Inquisitor. I think Inquisitor is probably a little, and again, they were like that's the other thing too. It's like when Nightmare came out, they were looking at numbers differently. You know what I'm saying? So I think that a lot of games have the problem of like League of Legends, for example. I used to play religiously. Okay.
Yeah, I used to play
League
as
of
well back in
Legends
the day.
is fucking broken right now because every new champion that comes out is just better than the last. Like it's just literally better, right? So the problem then comes into play when you have champions from the game's origin
That are dog
that are
shit.
not being updated, that are dog shit.
But I think
And
the
then you
issue with that too is that when you release a new character in League of Legends, now I know this is not OSRS related, but when you release a new character in League of Legends, you have to make it inciting, so you have to make it good, and also people are not familiar with the mechanics of the champion, so it's going to be busted at first. So it's like it's a different story as opposed to this game.
Well, the reason I'm saying it is because like you're talking about balance between old and new, right? Because while they're both live service games, they do more balancing for
Oh yeah,
League
they
than
do a
they do
lot more
for old
balancing
school,
than OSRS.
right? And so I think the biggest balancing change that we got for old school was the black d'hide change,
And the
and then I think they
blowpipe
changed some
nerf, and
blowpipe nerf, right? That's been it.
yeah, they've
So
changed a few other items like rune med helms don't have negative range, and like some random shit.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And then I think like what, like maces have like 2 more prayer bonus or something.
Oh yeah, and they're 4 ticks, and they also made like Dragon Warhammer 1 attack wreck, and they
Yeah.
also made fucking Blessed D'hide count as old Black D'hide, and but like that's not really a game breaking nerf. Like the blowpipe nerf was bad, but then they give us a Bofa, which is even arguably even better.
Oh, I would. I mean, I think it is better, but that's the thing. Like you're carving out options for certain individual things. But when you look at like the reason I bring that up is because I think set bonuses are a really good way to implement power creep in a constructive way for the game because it requires you to have 3 items rather than just one that increases your power exponentially, right? And exponentially is not right, but just that increases your power because like Van Braces, even though that's only a 1 damage bonus increase, Van Braces are still huge, right? Like it is bis by a mile. Um, I don't remember what it was for Ferocious Gloves whenever that came out either, which I guess
It
it's
was a
different
pretty
now
big
because
buff. It
we
was literally
have
a max hit and a bit of
yeah.
accuracy.
So I like those things. You know what I mean? I also like the idea that if you have set bonuses and set effects, you can have different items for different pieces of content, right? You know, like Virtus is only going to be used whenever you're utilizing the ancient spellbook, right? But for when you do use it, it's fucking huge. But you likely won't be utilizing it in a lot of different places. And I mean, again, it's probably consistent with kind of the methodology that they've done already, where if you have a certain piece of content, whatever you're using for that content will come out and be good against that content, right? Like Mace versus Nightmare, those types of things. Um, like generally speaking, whatever drops from the boss is good at the boss, which I know they've talked about maybe stepping away from and whatnot, but you know, who knows? But point being is that rather than it just being tied to one item, you have your set effect, and that couldn't even necessarily be like a direct buff to numbers, right? You could have special effects on top of whatever the full set is. So I just think, ooh, I just think that. Are you kidding? Sorry, I shouldn't watch your stream while I talk. I'm gonna get distracted.
No, there's a PK here, but there's only one, so it's
Yeah, I
fine.
saw you stood under so that you could catch a non-skull. Huh? That's a good
Yeah.
idea. Um, but I don't know. I just think sets are a really good way to introduce unique effects to the game while also not completely blowing it out of proportion. Um, because, for example, if you're going to introduce one prayer that increases your max hit by like 8 to 10, that's just a lot of power for one single thing. I don't even think the levels. They'll probably work on the levels as well, but the levels for the new prayers are not that big. Like they're not that crazy.
Yeah, they're really low.
Specifically for the ones that hit Giga hard, right? So I think the vows and stuff are the higher ones. Which again, maybe they still have some balancing to do there. I'm pretty sure they're just trying to get ideas about how people want this to go, which I do like. I think that the community consultation is really beneficial and is going to help continue to balance the game rather than completely blow it out of the water. But I just think, from my perspective, it's like the 1 item versus the 3 item kind of it gives you something as an iron, and this again, game shouldn't be balanced around irons. Um,
Hot take.
but yeah, I know, crazy. Um, but my perspective is just it gives you a little bit longer of a grind because you have to search for those individual items, um, rather than it just being the one, and then yeah, I don't know. And then if it's for specific situations, it just I don't know. To me, it feels like better game balance. You know, World of Warcraft did it way back in the day when you had set bonuses. There's plenty of other games that do it, and because you can have something that's like a baseline good, like Torva, right? Because Torva is just basically best in slot, and eventually, I mean, I don't know about the whole accuracy stuff, but like I think once you get past a certain max hit, like if your max hit is like let's just say it in theory, if you had a max hit of 8 versus um another set, wouldn't it just be worth using the max hit of 8 because your damage potential is so much greater?
Well, it depends if you're going for potential or consistency. If you're going for speedruns, you'd
I guess
probably
this
want to
point
go for potential, unless you're doing
potential.
like a difficult speedrun like Inferno or Chambers or Top, then you go for consistency.
Right. Right. So, and that's kind of what you have. I mean, like just Torva's good all around, right? Thanks.
Yeah, the set bonuses are cool. I think it'd be nice if the set bonuses weren't just like a flat DPS increase. Like if it was like I know Sabe was preaching the full Inquisitor Dragon Warhammer specs would be 100% accurate. I think that would be cool. Because then
Oh,
it
interesting.
adds
I don't
like
think I.
it's 100% accurate, but doesn't necessarily mean it'll hit. Like it'll just guarantee reduced defense.
Right.
So that makes it pretty much best in slot for everywhere. And imagine you're doing like Chambers, you'd probably want to bring a 3-way Inquisitor switch for your hammers, because that way you remove the inconsistency of the hammer not hitting, slowing you down significantly.
Right.
And I think changes like that are cool. It's hard to implement that. Like I know they tried with like the blood arc, they made it like heal you more, or the
Yeah.
other warrant that makes it freeze longer. Like those are cool concepts. I don't know if they're as good as it seems. Like I know I've seen what's his name, dude? The gamer PKer. I forgot his
Quite a
name.
few of those.
Yeah, he's like using it as a switch. West Ham. He's using
Mm.
the switch to like freeze a little longer and stuff like that. Dude, don't
Hmm.
let's get another one. He got a ring, dude. What the fuck? He's streaking. But yeah, I think like stuff like that are cool. And one thing too that I found interesting was Camping Online mentioned on stream. He's like, one way you can counteract power creep is by focusing on defense and accuracy over instead of damage.
Numbers.
So essentially, what you would do is you would release new content and new weapons that are more accurate, kind of like the Fang, and your bosses would be more defensive. So the new weapon that's more accurate would hit like have a same DPS as a scythe, for example, but it's so accurate that it'll hit much more often than a rapier or a scythe would on that specific boss, and that
Right.
essentially allows you to do power creep without actually breaking old content. Like for instance, if you go to Bandos with a shadow, Trexie was doing it, and no way camping is in chat. Hello, Trixie was doing it, Shadow Bandos,
Uh-huh.
and he was getting like 200 kill trips. It was insane. It was absolutely ridiculous. It made no
Yep.
sense.
Yep.
And the dude was literally feet on table doing Bandos, not even flicking. 200 kill trips. Like, that is insane. Like, I
I
remember
know.
when I did my
Exactly.
Bandos grind for the hilt, I was doing melee, Justy, flicking mage with my rapier and poking it, dude, to death with a Blood Fury. This
Yep.
dude's doing 200 whatever. And another tangent to add to that is I'm in another Discord. There's like a bunch
Hmm.
of gamers in there, most of them from Oblivion. And most of them, like, they're all normies except for me and Sally. And they're sending a day record right now for challenge mode chambers, the most CMs in a 24-hour session. And they're pacing right now. They're at 66 or 67 CMs in a day.
Jesus
They're
Christ.
averaging 20 to 22-minute raids with like a minute of downtime. So that's like 2.5 CMs an hour. And they've been going like I went before going to bed. I went to watch. And they're streaming it on their Discord. And
Hmm.
then I slept. I woke up and they were still going. And I was like, "What the fuck, guys?
Dude.
This is fucking crazy." And they're pacing 70 plus CMs. And the old record was 51. And that's just because Missouri, the Shadow, and those changes basically of Toa,
Hmm.
making it like so much better. Now imagine you add the new prayers on top of that, dude.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's the like that's the key, right? Is that on its own, when you look at it, you're like, boom, just a power increase. We're fucking golden, right? It's not that big of a problem. But then put on top of everything else that's been added, and then on top of everything else that will be added, which is hard to balance around, right? Because, I think the idea is just you're going to introduce better items later, right? That's just the only thing that you can do. Now, you might be able to do what we're talking about, like, and just do um, accuracy stuff. But if you're adding additional numbers, the broken game that we have, the way in which it works is just gonna blow that out of the water, right? Because it's like what if you're like one strength under, I don't know. It's just numbers are weird in this game, right?
Well, I think what's
So,
weird is the items that have a percentage damage increase that it's flat. So, for example,
right.
the arc like having a 70% damage buff to fucking
Demons.
demons. Yeah, sorry, fuck, I don't know why I lost that word.
No, you're good.
Like it scales so fast compared to other things. Like for example, if you have that arc light and you get a new update like Torfoot that adds 6 strength bonus, well, in other pieces of content you're gonna gain 1 or 2 max hits. With Arclight, you're getting like 5 max hits. So that's a significant buff compared to the counterpart gear. And that's what's scary. And what's scary about that is we're talking about 70% buff. But look at the shadow. It's a times 3 away from Toa and a times 4 in Toa. A times 4. That's insane. That means you get 1 max hit, you gain 4 with the shadow in Toa. And I think we were talking, and like the new ring that they're adding, it had like a 2% damage buff. That's like 7 or 8 max hits in Toa. Like, what the fuck, dude?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
The way that numbers work in this game is completely broken. And, like, people just want the bigger numbers. You want to see the bigger, like, again, when you look at it from the perspective of you've been hitting consistent, like, because what was the best magic weapon before that? Was it Sang?
Yeah, it was
like,
Sang.
it's like,
It was like
Sang.
a 47 max hit with full
47.
ancestral.
So you go from that to having a magic T-bow, which gives, I mean, that magic was the only thing that didn't have that item, right?
Yeah,
But then you
sense.
give it that, and regardless of how much the scythe, T-bow, and shadow are worth, right? It's still huge. And to an extent, those are some of the items that you really need to balance these new things around, right? Because like the new prayers with a blowpipe, for example, would probably put the blowpipe like a little bit above where it used to be pre-buff or pre-nerf, right? Probably.
Yeah,
Again, don't no numbers 100%, but probably around that. Which doesn't seem that bad. And if you have a bunch of mid-level players who want a power increase, they're like, "Oh shit, man, that's great. Like I'm going to get to hit like, 5 additional hits on my blowpipe and that's going to put me back before they nerfed it." Hell yeah, I'm going to do that. But then what that does to the end game content and all of that stuff, like, which, I mean, because that's another thing too. Like, I mean, I don't think that this is necessarily a problem, but I don't think that they're going to proactively lower Rex for any of the combat achievements, right? So what people have, pseudo struggled on, and not necessarily struggled, right?
Like the CA's become much easier too.
Right.
Like for Inferno speedrun, the Missouri and Vams and Lightbearer ring time save is like literally 3 minutes or something like that.
Yeah.
So you don't have to get a sub 65, you have to get a sub 69, which is like such a big difference.
Yeah. It like, and there isn't necessarily a problem with that because, it doesn't take away from your achievement right now, right? Because you have a Zuck helm and I don't, right? I just have elite stun. And you know what? Hey, that's fine. I could get master if I did some cooking with it, but I'm not like just too crazy about it, right? So, I don't think it boils or it waters down that achievement. But yeah, overall, it's going to be interesting because again, we're only going to continue to add it, right? And I don't necessarily mind that. And I like your ideas because again, I think niche items that are only utilized in certain situations. You brought up Fang earlier. I think Fang is a great use of a new mechanic, right? The Fang, and I think they did both buffing and nerfing it a little bit. I think they said that they put it like where they had intended it, but if you read that blog post, from what I understand and the way that I got it was always intended to double roll both the hit and the accuracy, right? And then just take the higher of the two numbers. But right now, I think it only double rolls accuracy and not the number, if I remember correctly.
It's because it used to, this is my understanding of it, it's because before, someone just subbed. Thanks for the sub, Beastman. Sorry, I'm not talking too much on stream. But what it used to work is that it would double roll the accuracy of the Fang, and it would also double roll the accuracy of the boss, the defense of the boss.
Mm,
So that the defense of the boss double rolling made a significant difference because the way the the rolls on bossing works is essentially you roll a hit. Imagine you roll a number from 1 to 500 for your hit accuracy. You roll a 300. Then you roll a number for the boss's defense. Imagine you roll from 0 to 800. You roll a 900, or you roll like a 600. Well, then the roll is higher on the defense than your accuracy, so he tanks it. But if you roll the defense twice, you get significantly better odds. Like your variance shrinks significantly, making it
right.
more likely that you're gonna hit. And we saw that change because you remember they didn't affect it for Toa because people thought it would be unfair, which I agree. I'm glad they didn't touch Toa with that Fang change. But the Fang was busted for everywhere else, like for
Yes. Yeah.
Nex, Callisto,
Yep.
and honest, like I was okay with it, but the item was way too common for them to do that. What they could have
Yes.
done instead, which I proposed a while ago, was they should have made the Fang as rare as the Shadow, and then keep the same mechanics.
Yeah.
But I think it was too late for that. Once like they had to do that at the start, so
Yeah, they had too many come into the game. Like, and it was never intended to be as powerful as it was, I think. And that's the other thing too. It's like when you have an intention on the way something will work, right? Because I think everyone was like testing it out, and it literally just was like performing as well as the rapier on anything that didn't have high defense, and then anything that did have high defense, it was just
significantly better.
obviously better,
Yeah.
right? So, it was just one of those things where it's like you should never not use it if you are ever using stab. Um,
Dude, even for
but
Nightmare, people were using it, dude.
yeah,
Nightmare's fucking crush. Like,
exactly. Like balance is so, especially when you're like balance in an MMO, especially like an MMO like ours, because like if you look at like a WoW and anything like that that's expansion based, right? If they fuck it up for a patch, that's fine, right? But because we're completely linear, or I think we're not horizontal. No, we are horizontal. Rather than it being vertical progression, right? Where you start your new X pack, you get up to a certain point, and then you're just growing numbers. We're definitely a lot more horizontal, where it's kind of you go and do whatever content you feel good with. Now, there's obviously a lot better items to get than others, but like for example, Dragon Warhammer is like iconic for any account, right? It's especially for Iron Man. It's a intense grind, but it's something that you need to do if you want to unlock other things, right? But the Dragon Warhammer will never lose its value, which is what's unique about our game, and one of the reasons why I think it works so well is because once you go and grind that thing, you've got it permanently, and you don't have to go regrind something. Now, new items might come out that are good, right? Now you have a
it's like a
mage staff
stepping
in
stone
game
item.
that, yeah,
Yeah, it's like if they
exactly.
release Dragon Warhammer 2.0, then you can do a hammer skip, just like how people do Sang skip or Trident skip through Toa and Tob.
Mm, yeah. So I like it because it feels like your items have value for the life of your account, right? Um, and especially because, and this is the other thing I enjoy too, right? Like obviously we're a part of the high level community, but when you're looking at it in terms of progression from account's origin, I really like the progression, right? Because once you get to mid game, basically so much content opens up to you that it's just kind of a question of like, what do I want to do? You know,
Yeah,
like
there's so much options.
I look so fondly back on that time because I feel like I was like every week I was just getting upgrade after upgrade after upgrade for my account, you know? And right now, literally I have two items from Next to have Biss. I need ancestral bottoms from Chambers, and I need a Tumican Shadow.
Yeah, your
So
grinds are long. Like every grind,
yeah,
every new item for you is like 100 hours.
literally, yeah. I have four items to have best in slot, basically everything. And then I have a bunch of other items to grind, obviously. But, it just doesn't have that same feel, which is
Yeah, but it's not as
odd.
special as it used to be, you know.
Yeah, yeah. So those dopamine hits don't happen as
As often.
consistently as they used to. Yeah. Um. So, and again, that's okay. But when you're talking about yeah, balance, I think it's just an important thing to keep in mind. So, are the prayers a little bit overtuned? I would say probably. Um, I think it's an interesting perspective because like with Shadow, Tebow, and Scythe, I believe they're better than they are in the outer world. I don't know that that's necessarily good game design. That is something that you can, I guess, do to help mitigate some of the overworld problems. Like Pking is going to be broken on this update, right?
Oh, it'll
Like,
be really strong. Like, it'll be nuts.
yeah, people will literally be able to hit damage stacks of 150, and that's literally out eatable. So there's also another question there too, right? I'm not a PKer, but I also know that that's a thriving community. One of the most consumed content on YouTube is PKing, right? It definitely has a spot within our game, regardless of if you're, I mean, like, look, I get killed
Yeah,
from
I agree
items
on
all the
that
time
too.
when I go to
But
the wilderness, but
another thing too is that like if an update goes through and it changes the meta for something, it will affect PKing, and I don't think they should do freaking exemptions. Like when
right,
the bow
right,
came out and then they wanted to exempt it from fucking BA, that was cringe. I thought that was
right,
really stupid because
yeah,
like you're meant to have new upgrades and new items to change the meta, and then they just full on block it.
I agree. So
And like if PKing is broken like that, then start releasing better defensive gear or remove the fucking restrictions. Like when I'm doing revs and there's a 2 second delay to telly because a rev is attacking me, that is the dumbest thing ever. Why did
yeah,
you implement that? I understand it's because bots were telling one tick telling it out and you couldn't TB them. Okay, but why am I getting punished as a player that doesn't bot?
yeah, yeah,
Like what the fuck? Are you serious? And the worst
yep,
part is it's so buggy that if a rev is attacking you and a PKer shows up and the PKer splashes their first TB, you still can't immediately tell you because the rev is still hitting you. So the TBR has two TB chances.
I
Like
didn't know
what?
that.
You have to splash twice in a row. Like, are you serious? I
Yeah.
think it's the dumbest thing ever. And sorry, that's just my point on PKing.
No, I think it's a good point. I mean, hopefully I'm not domineering this whole conversation because I obviously want it to be a conversation, but I mean I agree. Like that's the other thing too. It's like here's the problem also, right? We have a 99 HP pool to play with. I guess
I don't think they want
121
to
if you're
raise
talking
that
about
though. I
being.
know in
I don't.
RS3 they raised it with like Torva and
They
shit, but
raised it with Torva, yeah.
I don't think that's a good idea.
I don't either. But
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 they can offer like better food. Like they can offer like a food that heals you 24. That would. Oh shit! Someone just got a
oh,
enhance. That would
wait, that's
help.
only 98 mil.
That's it's been crashing hard the Bofa dude.
Oh my god.
Yeah, and I think it's because of a dry desert treasure too.
Yeah.
A lot of items are crashing. I was speaking to normies about it.
I literally lost 600 mil from my bank value the other day.
Yep, it's
And I
crashing,
was
dude.
I was like, what the fuck? Um, but yeah. No, I mean it's a shit. Oh, talking about HP and stuff like that. I agree. I don't think it should be specific to content where certain things have different effects and whatnot. But if you're looking at a whole, like if you're looking at the entire game's health based on balance, that's really fucking hard to do, especially when they have continuously implemented more and more and more. Because here's the other thing to keep in mind too: like the prayer is just a direct upgrade, right? But with no like if you look at it from the perspective of PKing, we don't have to stay on this um, for that long. But like from the perspective of PKing, there is no risk in using the new prayers. I mean, you have like I mean, if you're praying melee, right? You'll take more damage through prayer. If you're using the new smite, then you'll basically smite yourself as well. However, if you're just utilizing it for the damage increase when it comes to rushing, because I think that's what's going to break it specifically, um, that's just going to be completely busted, right? Because you're not fighting in a way that's like a one-on-one anymore. It's literally just you ambush somebody and then run off. So again, I don't necessarily interact with that content, so it doesn't mean that much to me, but when you're talking about again, game balance and you're looking at the whole game when something comes out because that's what you should, especially in a game like ours to try and keep everything healthy, it just becomes a really big problem. I Yeah, I mean, I think that's basically where that stands, right?
Yeah, it'll
Because
definitely break rushing and PvPing quite a
yeah,
bit. And
like
it's not gonna be hard to like counteract that. Even if you give them better food, you can still one bang you.
yeah. So I think that it'll be interesting to see how it goes. They still haven't. I mean, because they're talking about bringing out the Ancient Warrior stuff as well, right? And that shit's busted. So, um, but the other thing too is like the cost of use is something to keep in mind because like when you're PKing, if you're skulled, you're obviously risking shit. So people probably aren't going to be using the new prayer book in full Torva, if you're actually fighting a
Yeah,
legitimate
because you take
fight,
more
right?
damage, so it's risky.
Yeah. So, and
I
then
think they
also you
still
just
would though,
shouldn't
because you
risk
would deal more
users
damage,
anymore.
and typically the mod of this game is a good offense, is a good defense. Like that's why
Oh
whenever
yeah,
you do Tob and all that, they always recommend to bring max DPS gear because if you kill the boss faster, you take overall less damage.
right. I just mean from their perspective, like those people have even less incentive to like skull up, and then on top of that, I don't know. Again, I'm not much of a PvPer, so I'm probably just talking out my ass. But
So what kind of
um,
what could we propose to make it? What like ways can we fix it? Like what could we suggest if we had the power to? What would we suggest to Jagex to correct this issue? I have my
I
own
think
take on it, but you can go first.
sure. I think ultimately it's a problem with the current numbers that they're playing with. So I think that the prayer book in overall terms of the game is probably a little overtuned, especially when you look at implementing other pieces of content later. Um, right now, I think the power of the offensive prayers mitigates significantly the downsides of using it in most situations, right? So unless it's an example like Inferno, you wouldn't really use anything but the new prayer book. Um, but yeah, I think there could I don't know, like it's difficult. I'd like to hear I'd like to hear your thoughts, but I don't
So
know.
I
I just think
think,
probably overtuned is what it is right now.
yeah, for sure, Overtune. I think they should split it into two updates. They should make, I would say, put the prayers later, but I think it would not make sense lore wise. But what I would recommend they do is that they split the what they're releasing in the game. They have the ring, the axe, the ring. There's multiple rings. They have the axe that's built with the four components, and the mage set, the Virtus set.
Right.
I think they should put that on one side in one update, and the prayers on a different update. And they should release the four bosses, whatever they want to do. Make those bosses only drop the items. And then in the future, in maybe a year, they make a new raid that drops all the prayers individually and their add-ons. So you unlock the, imagine you unlock the prayer book with the quest, and there's only a few prayers. It's pretty shit. It's just really bad. Then they have a raid that releases the rest of the prayers that are unlockable, kind of like Rigor and Augury. So you have to unlock all three offensive prayers. You have to unlock all three defensive prayers. You have to unlock all the other miscellaneous stuff that you can figure out in the future. Maybe the current book only has the base like skilling stuff. Everyone's like, no shit.
I will say, I here's the thing. I like the idea, and this is one of the reasons why I like it, is because we're about to have a lot of new content come into the game. Um, and there's an element to this that comes down to like look at Chambers on release, right? That bullshit had Dragon Harpoons. What was the other one that it wasn't? It was Dragon Harpoon, Dragon Sword, I think was the
Dragon
other thing
Harpoon,
too.
Dragon Sword, and Dragon Throwing Knives were on the table.
Yeah, and those counted as purples.
Yeah, and
Like,
they were very common.
yeah.
You had a
But if you
31% chance to roll those items,
yeah.
which is
So,
kind of cringe. Imagine you get a purple and it's
yeah, dude.
100 Dragon Throwing Axes.
Thank Christ I didn't fucking raid back then. I
I didn't
would
rate, and
be
the T-bow was a
so
1 in
livid.
100 purple chance, or 2 in
Yeah.
100. Sorry, it was 1 in 50.
So so looking at it from the perspective, even now, raids has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 items from Chambers, right?
Yeah, that's
Theater of
excessive as
Blood,
shit.
Theater of
TOB
Blood, I
and
think
TOA
is a
is
little bit
7.
better. Both TOB and they're 7. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Tob is like a good middle ground. Toa was too easy to complete.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I went dry, it was too. I found the purple rate is just way too cracked.
Well,
Chambers is
they
way
yeah
too rare. You have
yeah.
to do 2,200 solos to complete it.
Oh my god.
That's disgusting. I got lucky and I spooned it.
Yeah, yeah.
1,500 raids.
So that's the thing. To your credit on the point that you were just making. I like that because it it spreads your power creep over a good portion, but it also allows for people to see how the how the other how the oh, fuck, they're not items, they're prayers, how the other prayers would interact with the game for that amount of time to then reposition people's opinion on what should then come into the game, you know.
Yeah, and the
One thing
reason
that's
why I say that is not, it's because the prayers are coming in way too fast. Like all these gears coming into the game is way too fast. They need to chill, take a step back, and release it in portions. I know a lot of people might not like it that fucking a new raid's gonna drop prayer scrolls again, but that's the best way to make sure that it's not all coming in at once.
yeah, I think there's some methodology they could implement that could maybe change that up to where it wouldn't be I don't know, because I understand the perspective of you do the content, you unlock the prayer book, and then everything else is the superfluous stuff, right? Um, I like that idea, um, because I think to your point, it all comes down to the specific power of the item, right? Like, because that's another thing too. It's like it's really difficult to balance a prayer book in the way that they want to right now, because with spells there's specific niche effects for those spells, right? Because when you look at combat within our game, there are there are only a few pillars to making it interesting and making mechanics around it, right? That is damage mitigation through prayer, damage mitigation through movement, and just movement in general, and tick timing. That's it, right?
Yeah.
That's basically it. So you have three pillars to be able to encapsulate a boss fight or whatever piece of content that you're implementing into the game that's combat oriented, and making it unique enough. You know, a lot of people complain about Muspa, and say what you will about Muspa. The thing I like about Muspa is that every kill to an extent does feel unique, because of the spike mechanic, right? Which is a direct correlation to the movement mechanics, right? Um, the smiting was an interesting idea.
Yeah, it was a cool concept, but I wasn't a fan of it because it was inconsistent.
True, right? Just because you could hit like nothing.
Exactly.
Um, but that's basically it. So damn, I hate the fact that I get on topics and I'm talking about something and I'm going to make a point and then setting up the point makes me lose the point. I don't know. Here's the point, okay? There isn't a lot that makes combat unique within our game, right? And the only true like addition is the addition of like bigger numbers. Um because I mean, we won't like because that's the other thing too. It's like we don't have abilities, right? RS3 does have abilities. Evolution of Combat was hot dog shit, by the way. I quit whenever that came out. I don't want any of that, so do not do not misinterpret what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that when you have more movement options, you have more options in terms of what you can utilize for like mechanics. One thing I do find interesting about RS3 and that I like is that there's content in that game that drops you new abilities, right? Which you could basically extrapolate from their game to ours as being like unlocking prayers, right? It's kind of the same thing. But that's a permanent upgrade once you get it. And then you just look at the power that you have with it from that point on and then try and decide like what it's going to look like, you know? I think capping things outside of raids is one of the only ways that you could legitimately balance it. And I don't agree with that because I don't like the fact that your prayers feel better and like only specific content from the perspective of numbers, right? Like if they were like, yeah, you'll get 8 max hits in Toa, but only 2 in the outer world. Technically, that would be a little bit more balanced, but I don't think the best for the game's health overall, right? Um,
Well, I think that's a smarter way to doing it because you're not power creeping the entire game. You're power creeping specifically Toa.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they already kind of did that when they came out with it. Even if you're not looking at the staff and you just look at salts, right? Because salts are better than overloads.
Yeah, they 125 range. That's true.
And then they like you can't destroy the boost as much because I think you can basically double dose a. I think in chambers you can only do one. You can only do one dose of yellow before you
Oh yeah,
have
you can
to.
double dose in Toa, like exactly enough, which is really cool.
Yeah, I like it. I think it helps to give people who are
If people don't understand
maybe
what I meant
struggling
there,
through
is
stuff or whatever.
in chambers you drink one brew and it brings you from 120 to like 93, 104. And then if you drink another brew, you go down to like 90 range, so you get under potted. But in Toa, you can drink two brews and you go down to 99, and then the buff of the salt would bring you back up. So it's
Yeah.
cool. You can chug brews a lot faster in Toa.
So that's one of those things that I kind of like being raid specific because that's a and here's another thing too. Here's a good man. It's so I don't know, man, because that's the thing. It's like that's one of the cool things about our game, right? There are so many opportunities to introduce new things, like the introduction of overloads solely being in raids. I think is great because you immediately give players the ability to empower their character in a unique way that does not break the rest of the game, right? Because overloads were another one of those things that completely broke everything about RuneScape, right? You just had to have them for every single piece of content. The more, if you didn't, you were basically just trolling, and it almost became a thing of like you as a PVMer had to get whatever the level was for overloads.
Yeah, you have to do your herb lore like as an Iron Man style.
Yeah. Which again, I'm maxed. At this point, it doesn't matter to me. I really enjoy working on my skills just as a base level for like improving at the game. Like I think it's fun. But forcing individuals to interact with certain content, like like they have sometimes done in the past with like I think uh wilderness is a good example, right? To an extent, you're sort of forced to interact with it. From the perspective, if you want a dragon pickaxe, right? Um, how many KBD kills did Trexie do before he? I think it was like over 1,500, something like that.
3,500 or something. He went pretty
3,500.
dry for it.
Yeah, to
On
get his D
hardcore.
pick, and now he could just go do
VM or
like
KQ.
yeah, which KQ's probably like in terms of the boss itself is a little bit more dangerous. However, in terms of like the walking to the KBD layer through the wilderness,
That's
like
Gigam sauce. Yeah, it's scary as hell
exactly.
on hardcore.
So there were certain individual things that you had to enact with. Now, again, hardcore is a restriction that you're placing on your account. However, the restriction of only this item drops from the wilderness is a bit difficult to swallow. Now, I think they have done it right with certain things. For example, I own a Void Waker. I think Void Waker is a unique idea to add into the game. I don't think like if you're doing the later bosses or the deeper bosses, the time to get the blade I don't think is insane. I don't have the calculations in front of me, but it's not, depending upon your like team size and stuff like that, it's not too bad. You can absolutely solo Vedion and Venenatis. That's how I got my pieces from those two pieces of content. And then here it was a little bit worse at Callisto.
Yeah,
Just
Callisto's
because
a little
Callisto
rough.
hits through prayers so frequently, like there's no real way to solo it because you're basically just taking next damage. So
But the Void Waker is still very reasonable to complete. It's not like the
yes.
Void Waker is probably like 40 to 50 hours if you're like medium term gaming. But
Yeah.
if you compare it to Claws, which is like basically the counterpart, the Claws are like 400 hours to get or something.
Mm.
That's a huge difference in time.
Yeah. So that's one of the things that makes it good. And not only that, if you're somebody who ended up getting claws and you don't really feel like doing wilderness content, you don't necessarily have to get a Void Waker. I think the Void Waker is busted as shit. And I'm happy that I have it, but I also think it's just a cool item, but you know,
Yeah, and I'm not
it's
gonna lie, I'm a
interesting.
fan of the 3 component for Void Waker for the 3 bosses. I think that's a really cool concept, and I hope
You
they
like
do that
component?
more often. I know they're planning to do it for the 4 bosses.
Hmm.
I think it's very clever.
I agree with you. I think one of the reasons why I don't think that I didn't like going for the Void Waker, because I'm somebody who did not do wilderness content pre this update. Like, I interacted with it so little, and overtly hated it. I got 23 million mining experience with a rune pickaxe at Amethyst. Okay,
I remember.
um, yeah. So, and that was like, that was during getting 99 and then post 99, and I think even post max on some instances, right? So it I like it because if you look at it from overall drop rate, it's still relatively high in terms of like number to complete, because you could go dry on one, you might go not dry on others. I mean, like for me, again, RNG is everything within this game, and that's all anecdotal because it's different for per person, right? But like I have 5 Void Waker gems, and only one pieces of the other two, and I'm sub 1K Venenatus KC, and that's basically all done post release. Post this release, right? So I didn't have much KC on my account before the release of this, but the uniques from it, and the fact that you have, I mean, I don't know, that's another thing too. It's like the wilderness bosses now have quite a few. I mean, they just have 2 more drops, right? I mean, before the wilderness bosses were just go either get a ring or a dragon pickaxe, right? So I like the fact that they've implemented, you have the fangs and you have the gems, right? I guess dragon two-hander was there too, but half of that shit didn't matter. So it just kind of gives more variety to the drops that you're getting as well, and then changes up your content. I'm very much looking forward to the new content, to the new bosses, not only because they're new bosses, but because of what you just talked about, like the fact that they're going to drop components of the deal, which I recognize that I was the component Andy for a bit there and was like sort of memeing, but I did think eventually that components would become a part of our game. This is a different structure from those components that I preached about, but um,
But I think you're right. They will become part of the game one day. I'm sure they will. That's why I've been slowly picking up random shit.
yeah.
I'm becoming you, dude.
I know. I'm sorry to do it to you. I just look, I like bank value going up. I'm keeping the gems on my account because, again, I could have dropped them, but there is an
Yeah, but you're
element
you're
of
a different playstyle than others.
it's
Like
true.
you
Yeah.
like to collect shit.
Yeah.
Pretty much obvious with your stack of fucking amethyst, anglerfish, and potions.
True.
But like, I don't really give a shit. I just kind of chuck stuff in the
Yeah.
in my alt whenever I need money.
Well, here's the thing too. It's like you can always come back to this content, You might go dry, which is one of the only reasons why I have opted to do what I do and keeping so much is just because I would rather, if a piece of content comes out that's like, oh, you can sacrifice a Void Waker piece to make whatever your item is hit based off of magic, right? Like just for example,
Oh,
right?
like a shamanism buff like that to it.
Yeah.
That
Because
would be
that's
insane,
another.
dude.
Here's another
Holy.
thing, and we can get into this too if we want to pivot to new skills. Um, we can. But I think because that's another thing too when you're talking about reward potential and like what you brought up earlier is that not in fact are you cool with pivoting because this is I think the
You
perfect
want to go
opportunity
to
to
new
pivot.
skill?
Yeah, let's go to new
Yeah, go
skill.
for it. You can
um
kickstart it.
Basically what you talked about with the fang in terms of like you're not boosting damage number but you're boosting consistent damage. um I think I liked. So I liked all the ideas. I think that, of all of them, taming was the weakest. Um, but I still saw some merit to it. But I think sailing and shamanism are the ones that have the most potential for unique ideas to add into the game. Overall, I did vote for sailing over shamanism, but it was a very close. Like I was kind of toiling with my decision through the course of like deciding what I wanted to vote for. Okay, now I think Um, I'm really so I also voted yes to warding. I will just say that overtly. But I'm glad that warding did not come into the game because I think the idea of shamanism was exponentially better. I think there's probably some consistency between the ways to like train it. Although if they do further, you know, like delve into their ideas and fleshing that skill out, I think that would obviously change now. But I think from a perspective of like reward space, um, the I think Signerd called it vegan invention, which I thought was pretty funny. Um, but the
That
like
is funny, actually. I didn't hear that.
yeah. So the interesting thing about that is that you would automatically give you'd automatically give an item sync for basically everything in the game to a certain extent, right? Depends upon what it is, which would only benefit the economy, right? Removing certain things. Um, and then when it comes to items like later game items, let's just use the Void Waker for example, since it's kind of what got us on this topic, right? Um, you could have each individual piece of the Void Waker, right? Um, constitute a style, right? So you could say that your Void Waker hilt, if you made that into a component and you attached it to something, would give you an additional blunt stat, right? For crush, right? The Void Waker gem would be a way to make an item uh, attack like its attack stat based on magic, right? And then with the blade, have it be slash, right? There are a plethora of items with the game with the items that are already in the game. Plethora of ideas with the items already in the game that you could utilize that would also start sucking those items out, and would only benefit the economy from a main perspective, right? From an iron perspective, again, you're literally just looking at more of a grind, which you could see as slightly bit more annoying. However, as an iron, my perspective is it's like, I chose to struggle through regardless of what that meant for the account, right? So that's one of the reasons why I keep so many things on my account is because if they ever add that, I don't want to have to go back and do content that I've already completed. I don't think there's necessarily a problem with that, and some people are going to have to do that, but just one thing, right? So for the reward space of shamanism, I think that is something that they could do, right? And something that I think would be incredibly healthy for the game. Shamanism, from the overall perspective of like training, I don't think was going to be as unique as sailing, which is one of the reasons why I went more towards sailing. I think a lot of people who did also vote for sailing is probably from the perspective of you have the like exploration. A lot of people thought about dungeoneering and having it have some consistencies between that and the new idea, but sailing just in general from like a gameplay perspective I think does end up fitting pretty uniquely into old school because it's something that RS3 doesn't have. Now, while you can take ideas from other things that RS3 have done, which I'm a big proponent of anything that works in another game, if you can make it work in your game's framework, like I don't it's not theft. You know what I mean? Like good content is just good content. So there are plenty of things that they could do. Because that's another thing too. When sailing first got pitched, I was like, oh, this will be you sail to an island and you do dungeoneering.
Yeah, you just dungeoneering on an island, and
Yeah.
you sail to other islands. The thing with
Yep.
the new skill that I feel like I should bring up is
Sure.
all three options could easily be either an expansion or a minigame, and it'll do great.
For sure.
Just imagine if they made a new skill, they call it tempo tracking, and it was a tempo tracking minigame. That would be giga cringe. That's basically what they're trying to do now, except, like, obviously you're gonna go into bigger detail. I freaking hope so.
Yeah.
But they could just do taming and expansion to farming or hunter. They could do, or maybe a combination of both. They
Hmm.
can do shamanism, make it an expansion to herblore, and they could do sailing. That would, I don't think it's really an expansion. That would be more like a mini game, and it will
Uh-huh.
do great. People are gonna love it. So why are we trying to force a new skill into the game? Because I personally do not think we need one. I still voted yes because I know that whatever we do, it's gonna pass. So I might as well
Hmm.
like accept that and like vote to what I think is best out of the three options. But if it was really up to me and I was like a VP at Jagex, I would say fuck the new skill. It's not worth it.
Interesting. Why do you think that it's not worth it?
I think the only reason why they want to bring it into the game is because the marketing traffic you're gonna get from that. I think this game is what 10 years old now. A 10-year-old game with a new skill that finally comes out, you're gonna have a lot of old players come back, and that's really healthy for the game, short term and long term. But I think overall, adding a new skill is very risky because the issue with a new skill is you're forced to do it. You have no choice to do it. You need the levels for total level. You need the max cape. Maybe it's for diaries. So people are going to feel obligated to do whatever this new skill is, whether they like it or not.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I don't think we need one. I don't think the game is dead enough where we warrant that. But I think it's going to pass regardless of whatever I say. So I'm going to be voting as if it's coming into the game because it will.
Gotcha.
So I voted for sailing and taming. I thought taming was cool. I wasn't a fan of shamanism. I don't want to have to grind for a skill for a couple minutes or hours to get a buff to go top, send one top. I'd rather not have to worry about that.
Yeah, that would be bad game design.
But I'm not sure how they're gonna implement it. If they don't do it that way, maybe I would have voted for it. But from what I read in the blogs, it looked kind of scary. So I didn't.
There was some things that kind of felt like they were gonna do. I think again, I'm gonna draw a correlation to RS3 because there's some correlation to be drawn. Like it's one of some of the ideas that have been proposed in these new skills have come directly from things that have been implemented in that game. So obviously not one-to-oneing it, but there is some likeness to be drawn. So with that in mind, the way that I interpreted them talking about shamanism was that you'd pseudo have some reward space for like what we talked about earlier, where you can get components from certain items and then get unique effects put on other items, right? Which again, I think would be cool. Would also give us some pretty unique potential to rather than implement numbers, you could implement accuracy stuff and things like that. Again, there's a plethora of stuff that goes along with it. For example, if people don't know anything about RS3's invention skill, they have a bunch of different effects, one of which is called genocidal. So basically, from the top of your Slayer task, let's say that you had 200 abyssal demons, right? The closer you got to 0, like completing the task, you would just deal more damage, right? I think it's like a percentage based off I think it goes up to 5 or 10%. I can't be sure. I can't remember rather. Which is big, but again, only at the 7. Thank you. Only at the end of the task, right? So there's a method where if you have a dragon's task, you go kill 190 dragons, and then the last 10 kills that you do, you go to the boss because you have additional damage. And then that kind of helps you sort of change up content so that you're not doing 200 dragon boss kills. And there's kind of some you can basically decide what you want to do as a player rather than just feeling like you have to be stuck at certain individual content for forever. Now, again, you play the game how you want, but point being, that's one of their perks that you can put on a weapon. And you can put that on any weapon, right? But you can only do it once. So you'd have to farm out whatever would be the item to...
You have to get multiple rapiers?
You could say that, yeah.
Shit, that's interesting. I'm not a fan of the buff, though, but it's a cool concept. I'll give it that.
Well, that's my point, yeah. It's like you have... just think of any additional effect that you'd want on a piece of item, like an item, right? Like, for example, if you could add something to increase the power of a scythe, for example, you could do that. You know what I mean? Like, I think we were talking with people the other day. It's like, what if you were able to sacrifice, again, it depends upon the item, right? But you were able to take an item and you could buff the scythe to, rather than it being 100% damage, 50% damage, and 25% damage, you could buff it to be 100, 50, 50, right? So while that isn't an insane increase, you're going from like max hits 50, right? Let's pretend that the max hit of the scythe is 50. Your second hit's going to be a 25, and the third hit's like a 12.5, right?
12, yeah.
Um, you're just only buffing that tiny number to be the 25 again, which does buff your damage quite significantly. However, that's just like one idea, right? But they would further push certain items to be better. You have to be careful with that, I think, obviously, because like you wouldn't really want to go crazy with like power increases to the T-bow, right? And certain items, I think, in that game are restricted for what perks they can have on them. So in theory, you could have the twisted bow just not utilize any damage multipliers. And you'd have to, only have accuracy or something else, whatever it might be. There's just basically sky's the limit when it comes to a piece of content like that, right? Because then it becomes just a thing of like, oh, well, what do players want? From the perspective of what would be healthy. Because another thing I think too is that we have a pretty vocal community, right?
Yeah, big
I think
time.
gamers in general are pretty vocal, but just in terms of what we want, the old school community does a lot of complaining on Twitter, okay, and Reddit. It plays in general, okay. I love us, but we got some problems. But the point is that your player base doesn't always have the best interest of the game at heart, right? Perfect example is talking about the new prayer book. It's probably overtuned, right? And if you were a dev looking to implement something like this, you probably would have gone maybe under, or they could have gone over, and then they get pulled back. So the nice balance that we have in the game is you have basically the devs, the 90% of the player base that aren't necessarily shitters, but are like kind of in that ballpark of like not incredibly good, not incredibly bad, just kind of middle of the road. And then the top 10% who are the people who break the game with the new pieces of content and say, hey, if you're going to balance this, be aware of this, right? Like your Wookses, Adicons, No Monkeys, like those types of people who are giga gamers who just, again, understand the game to such a greater extent, right? So in terms of balancing, you essentially have three pillars to try and find it. Okay. So with shamanism, if you're utilizing that, that's one of those things where the players could say, "Hey, we like this idea." Then the developers could go, "Hey, that's great. It kind of breaks it in this way." And then they come out with a secondary thing, and then you go to a beta, and then the people who are currently breaking the game with the new prayer book are like, "Hey, you might want to be aware," right? So I like the safeguards that we have in place. But again, your player base isn't always like, it's nice to garner interest in the certain things that you want, but a player's perspective, like if you're looking at anybody in the mid game, right? Why would they say no to any form of power increase?
Yeah, they're for sure
Like
gonna say
ever,
yes. But
right?
Reddit still pulled back a little bit on the prayers. Like I remember when it was released, like when the beta version was released, they were
Uh-huh.
saying that it was underpowered, and then it took like maybe a couple more days, and then people were starting to agree. Okay, it's a little OP.
Yeah.
Which honestly, when people were saying it was underpowered on the Wednesday of the update, I was really scared. I was like, "Oh fuck, this is not
Yeah.
good. Like this is gonna kill the game." And
Yep.
then slowly pulled back, and I was like, "Oh, dude, thank fuck," because I was really nervous they're gonna buff it even more.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was thinking, because I think whenever I voted for it, I voted for the 100% mitigation but lowers your defense, and then I was happy that the chip damage passed because I would have changed my vote had I been able to. Um, and then, again, now I'm just kind of waiting to see what happens. I'm hoping that somebody like a No Monkey, like, because that's another thing that I like to do as well. Like, we have so many great players with the game and people who are who like you have the meta definers, right? And so I enjoy watching those people to try and get an idea for how something is going to go down, and how like the everyday person will enact with the content, right? Because while I am Max and I'm probably better than, you know uh like, okay, not this is not intended to sound arrogant, right? But like, I think people who Oh God, no, that's gonna sound horrible.
You're definitely better than Heffy. We can say it that way. So you're
There you
above
go.
average.
Exactly. Yeah. So people who are better than Heffy, which is like, everyone. No.
We can
But
assume Heffy is the average gamer.
there you go. Yeah. I just from that perspective, right? Um the higher level people interacting with content, certain things like that, who are a bit more. I like to look at people, I like to look at the Giga gamers so that you can go, okay, this is what is going to be, you know, almost expected of the upper echelons of players. And then for your average Joes, this is kind of what you can see. And then the fact that I don't like to try hard in a lot of my content, I kind of just like to take it slow. I just like enjoy the pacing, um, which is where I see myself, right? So how that would be for me, right? So it's it's nuanced, but I like to make my opinions based off of not necessarily having a high level player tell me this is how you should vote, but just seeing how that high level community interacts with the piece of content. So I know how busted it is and how broken it is. And then I can kind of try and extrapolate my own opinion based off of that. Sometimes it's influenced by ideas of the people putting forth that piece of content, but it isn't always like a 100%. He said vote this, I'm gonna vote this. I like to think that I have my own perspective on that stuff, but um, regardless, I can't even remember what got us specifically on this topic. I have that problem.
New
I know we were talking about
skill
like
going
we were talking
into.
okay, so yeah, so from the perspective of like I'll likely be voting based on a video that I see of that. But when you're talking about like shamanism, again, that's what got us on this thing. So the reward space that we just talked about, with it being you could put specific effects and utilities on individual items and then go from there. Um I like. The other thing that I saw as other reward potential is that you had like incense sticks. I think they talked about certain things like that, which is essentially RS3 has that. I think to as an extension of Herblore, where you have like vulnerability bombs and incense as well, that just provide you specific, um, in
So you
like
like throw it
specific.
to NPCs and then they can either become aggressive or unaggressive.
Yeah, I don't know much about vulnerability bombs. I just know that basically, if you're a late game PVMer, you use them everywhere. But
Yeah,
I
because this
interpret
Rojo guy
them
just said Vuln bombs are broken. I don't know what
broken.
they are
Yeah,
either.
they
You can cast vulnerability without changing spellbook. Ah.
Oh, I didn't know that's what it was. Gotcha. Okay, cool. So it's a
So it
defense
lowers
lower.
opponent's defense without actually requiring to cast a spell.
Gotcha.
Ah,
That's interesting.
interesting. I guess that would be really good in like high level PVMing when you're like, imagine you're fighting like Baba, you just toss that instead of BGSing, and then you can
Yeah,
dump your specs.
because I don't know how much defense lowering shit they have in that game, especially because their special attacks work based off of their adrenaline. So, um, which is basically another cool thing that another cool thing that is built within their framework is the fact that you can utilize. I think the Zeros God Sword is like super broken, but the fact that the reason it's broken is because you don't have to wait for a spec to recharge. You just get your adrenaline, and you can use it. But then again, you miss out on being able to use other abilities, so it's a bit different.
Yeah, he's saying that you don't even use a hammer
Got it.
anymore. You just fucking chuck the
So there you go.
vulnerability things.
Is vulnerability bombs from Herblore? I thought that they were. I think that they are. I think both incense
I'm
sticks and
cool. I think
vulnerability
that's
bombs are from
cool
that.
that
Yeah.
it was a Revenant update. I think it's cool that you can get buffs like that through Herblore because I'm a big fan of Herblore.
Me too.
Oh, he says
I think Herblore
120
is like,
herb slash farming expansion with the dinosaurs. What the fuck? What?
yeah, dude. So we've talked about animal husbandry, which again, speaking about new skills, something that they could have done and that they can still do with like taming, for example, even though they're not going to pursue it any further. Um, Taming could have been just player-owned farms. And player-owned farms are essentially, I mean, it's exactly what it sounds like. Like you can raise chinchompas, dragons, you can raise anything in that game, and then basically once it's fully grown,
You
you
harvest?
harvest it, and you get items from those things, right? And there's another cool thing about it too, where it's literally like you actually have some breeding stuff, and you can get like shinies and shit like that. Like
Dude,
it's
not gonna lie,
actually when I
that looks
played
really
it,
fun. I want
it
that.
is it dude, it's fucking fun, man.
That looks cool.
um, so I think, like from the perspective of like, say like we have a player owned house, right? Like one of the reasons why I voted for sailing is just because I think the sheer amount of content that you can add based off of islands and certain things like that. Like, why the fuck couldn't we have like a player owned island, right? Which could have your player owned farm or other things of that nature to where you can just, interact with content in specific ways. Now, I get that I'm a little bit more of a role player than other people from the perspective of just like, I like. It's like you've seen my house, right? My house is so inefficient. I basically just made a mansion in RuneScape that has a fucking garden for my pets and my teleports, and I think that it's like 2 ticks longer to enter, but you know what? I'm having fun, so it's fine. Um, but yeah, the player-owned farm idea is just good. And then they had an expansion. Their Bone Island, their fucking Fossil Island, Jesus Christ, is a lot different than ours. I think theirs is. I think they did like a whole expansion called the Land After or Before Time. I can't recall what it is. Um, but it's built all around, I think, the Dragonkin, if I'm not mistaken. Like that's the whole idea of that island is Dragonkin because I guess Dragonkin came from uh like dinosaurs back in the day. So you have like a bunch of like there's just like you basically have like T-Rexes and Velociraptors and just a bunch of crazy other things that are happening on that island, on top of like some like carnivorous plants that are like hyper aggro and stuff like that too. So again, just your typical um RuneScape shenanigans, really. But it's it's a cool space, and I think there are elements because I filled out that questionnaire when it was initially garnering interest in like what you would like to see sailing, like what do you like between the individual pitches before it went live to the in-game poll. Um, and while going through that, I essentially kind of said the same thing where it's like I think that you can build out reward space for other skills that have been proposed within inside the framework of sailing, for example, right? Um, I think that the 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 element of, and again, it wouldn't have nearly as much, right? Granted, but for things like taming, I just wouldn't want to have the game be because I liked summoning, but summoning will break the game, right? Um,
The rewards of
if
summoning
they
was too OP. I like
yeah, if
summoning's
they
concept of gathering charms. I thought that was really cool.
I I I have fond memories of going down to the DK tunnels, man, and having
Barraging those
somebody.
lobster thingies.
Yes, dude. And I was too shit back in the day and didn't want to pay for the runes, so I paid somebody else to put me in a party so that I could farm them, right? Like there were so many unique ways. I thought summoning gatherables was so good. Like I really enjoyed getting charms. Like
Yeah, I
that
think
was
so
I
too. I like the concept. I know it's very Iron Man like base concept, but I was
Mhm.
a really big fan of that.
So, yeah, that was something that just I don't know, man, cuz I have dude, summoning release was some of the most I think that was some of the best times I ever had on this game. And like I just because that's another thing too. Like you talked about the perspective of the new skill being a not necessarily entirely a business decision, but definitely being heavily influenced on being able to bring a insane amount of players back, or just an influx of new people in general. And I think that there's some truth to that. I also think there's truth to the fact that look, old school as a system is entirely going to be driven by player choice at this point, right? They've already set that up. I don't think they're ever really going to change that. I don't know that I think that the poll threshold will ever be lowered more than 70%. I think 70% is probably where it'll stay, at least for the next 5 years. I don't think it'll go any lower than that after, but I think 70 is where they'll keep it, right? But for me, the thing that I miss about those old times is just waking up, having an update go live that no one knows anything about.
Yeah, the mystery of the update.
and you just find it together, right?
That was
And
what was
so,
cool about Toa too, learning the mechanics and everything.
yeah,
I like that.
I had so much fun that first week on Toa.
Yeah, we were in the same teams, dude. We were fucking
I
trolling.
know, yeah. All of it. I remember when we were like, it's like, oh, you have to put Akka in the fucking like, literally just attacking Akka in the
In the wrong
3/4 of the
quadrant.
quadrant that you
Yeah.
can't kill it in, right? And all of us are sitting here being like, what the fuck is going on?
It's invincible.
Um,
What was funny too is when we were doing a zero invocation, we're at Z-back, and we're all like T-bowing Bofang, and then Steve-O sipes it, he's like, oh my god, Sipe slaps! And I'm like,
yep.
really? And then we all just whip our Sipes and start
Yeah,
swinging it.
it's like finding that content.
That was
It's one of the
magical,
reasons.
dude. I'm not gonna lie,
Yeah,
that was magical.
there's a feeling of adventure might not necessarily. It's the feeling of discovery that you get. And not everybody likes that, but I would say that just overall, again, the fun that brings when you don't know the efficient. Like, here's the thing: is efficiency fun on occasion? Yes, I'm not the most efficient player out there, and for the most part, I will opt to do less efficient methods if it means that I don't have to go as hard. Okay, so that's just my perspective. Like when it came to Gauntlet, for example, right? I could do Corrupted Gauntlet like a little bit speedier and have like less food, but I always opted to have more just to ensure the KC, basically, right? So regardless if it slowed my kill down by a minute and a half, I would still always opt for the safer method. Um, and people play the game differently, right? So that's always something to keep in mind. But when it comes to like new content like that and just the exploration and discovery of new methods, and again, I took time off so that way I could do that without knowing what the metas were, because I just think it's so much more fun when you play a piece of content on release. We knew what the rewards were gonna be, but no one knew what the purple chest was gonna look like, right?
Yeah, that was
Like,
sick.
I remember the first time we saw the purple chest and that bitch opened up and then spawned that purple or that gold orb, right? Like you were literally just sitting there pogging off, like just straight
Yeah.
up. Like,
And it was, of course, it was your fucking purple, too.
you're goddamn right it was. But like that is the one element that I think that we miss from the old days, which isn't necessarily a problem because it's a different game. People want to have a little bit more of a say about uh, what comes into the game, how the balance is going to look. I think that's all good and fine. I think ultimately, because of the type of game that we play, and power creep is going to be such a power creep is the only factor that really comes into play with a lot of the content that comes in our game, right? And it's one of the only reasons why the polling exists in the first place. It exists in large part due to evolution of combat, but I think more so than that, the people's opinions based on when the game first came out was we do not want any version of power creep. We want the game exactly as it was when it released on that server that you got as the backup, right? And then people realize, oh shit, that means literally if we want to play this game for more than 10 years, like for more than 3 years, the only bosses that we have to kill are Dagonoth Kings, right? And that's like the most interesting boss is just Dagonoth Kings. So then you go, okay, well, what if we continued to linearly implement updates to the game as it was back in the day, right? We got Grand Exchange, we got God Wars Dungeon, and then the first new boss being Zulrah, right? Because after a certain point, the only thing that you could continue down the path of RS3 was the evolution of combat, which obviously nobody wanted, right?
Yeah, well, I remember they were saying back then that there was no other way for them to implement different mechanics besides doing EOC, because then that would allow them to play with mechanics. But
Yes.
the people playing the game and the devs were not like, they weren't aware of the amount of depth you can go into with simply movement mechanics, prayer
Yeah.
flicking mechanics, and gear switching mechanics. It was always just a click boss, face tank, chug bruise,
Yes.
and I'm
Which is
glad that
why
we went away from that for OSRS, because that
yeah.
would have been so boring, dude.
Well, again, I think that it just has such a unique space because again, as a player base, we are exponentially better than we were back then, right? Um, not only because we're not kids anymore, but again, you have people who find the methodology. We know what a tick is, right? We know that attack cycles are what they are. I mean, dude, I remember training with God swords back in the day because they hit harder, and I was like, oh yeah, bigger number means that I'll
Do
get
more
more
damage,
XP,
yeah.
right? So like
Bro, it's
now that
funny
I
because I did
know
the
that,
same thing.
yeah, it's like, look, that's the one thing that we no longer get, right? Which is why, for me specifically, I think a new skill lends itself to that rediscovery. The no one knows what the meta is. So if you're doing it on release, everyone's just sitting there being like, I got level 10 doing this, I did this, I did this, it was pretty good. Oh, was that method good? Okay, maybe I'll go try that, right? And you just find a bunch of different things to do. And similarly, like, again, summoning was relatively linear, but the unique thing about summoning when it came out was the fact that you needed charms, right? And because the wiki was utter dog shit back in the day, you don't know what drops charms. So everyone's just sitting there going and killing anything that they can, trying to figure out if it'll drop something. And then they're like, oh, goblins drops golds, right? And then you just have a bunch of people in Lumbridge killing goblins hyper inefficiently because people needed charms to be able to level the skill, And then eventually people found out that, oh, Slayer is a really good way to gain charms over time. Then you had Bork, if you remember Bork, the guy in the Chaos Tunnels that you could kill. I think it was weekly or day. I can't remember.
I don't
I think
remember
it was
that, dude.
weekly. Yeah, Bork was a guy in the Chaos Tunnels that you could go kill, and then he dropped like 40. I think it was a weekly thing. He dropped like 45 blue charms. He just dropped a bunch of different charms, right? And that was
Holy.
basically his only reason to do that was because of the charms that he dropped. But once people found out about it, it was like, oh yeah, you need some gold, you need some blues, just do this. Like you have certain things that you could do on sort of a cooldown and do that. But the discovery is the thing that I think that we've missed in old school for a while because of the methodology that they've gone into the game and the production with. So one of the reasons why I want a new skill is because of that, and the discovery of sailing, the discovery that sailing could bring, I think is maybe more in line with that. And again, I think that you can do a lot more with sailing because you just have so much more area to play with. The fact that it could be the entire ocean, I was sort of, again, one of the other things too that I like about this is that the community can come up with ideas and Jagex can pick the ones that they like most and that would actually work within their game, and then kind of go from there in terms of how to balance it out, because there's a ton of things that you could do to level it, right? Like from just sailing the ocean, getting a base amount of experience, to completing tasks. I think maybe this idea has already been happened, so I'm not going to say that I'm the first one to think about it, but something that I think would be cool is that you could have basically tasks on the sea that would be akin to, Slayer or the clue scrolls, right? So essentially, like, you go to an NPC and you get a task of, there's been abyssal demons are overrunning this specific island, which then gives reasons to have a bunch of different islands, even if something isn't happening on them 100% of the time. You basically just be like, okay, boom, you go to this island, there's other players on it, you do whatever, but you have a specific mission to do on that, right? You go to that island, say, after having to sail from that port, getting to the island that you're going to, right? You get there, and then it's like, okay, we're looking for, like, somebody told us buried treasure was here, but we don't know where it's at. You need to go find it, right? And so
That'd
you
be
get
cool. I
onto that
like that.
island,
And make it shit
and
out
then you,
clues too while you're at it. Fuck yeah.
yeah, dude. So yeah, you get on the island, and then you get more clues as to where the treasure is buried within that island. And then once you get whatever it is, like the reward from there, you take it back to the guy that you got the deal from. You give him
The loot or
the
whatever.
bounty, the loot,
Like maybe
exactly,
you
and then he
stack,
gives you a
kind of like
reward.
stacking dog tags, but instead you stack like I
Yeah,
don't know, like
doubloons, right?
years
Or
or
yeah,
something. I don't know,
yeah,
some.
like Elder Gold. Who fucking knows, right?
And then you hand
Elder
him like
Gold.
100 of those, and he gives you like a 10,000 sailing XP drop.
Yeah, like that's
And
the
what would be cool
unique
too
thing
is you
about.
get XP for in sailing anything you do. Like you chop a log, you get your 100 XP from chopping the maple log, but you also get 10 sailing XP. So
See,
everything you do
that's
just gives you passive sailing XP.
yeah, everything you interact with, like when you're sailing to different islands, could also be a way to train other skills. Because that's another thing too that you could think about is like, sailing could be a really good way for people to just base level upgrade their account based on skilling,
Yeah,
right?
because you'd
Because
be leveling up other skills at the same time. It'll be very good for like mid-level players. I know
yeah,
HLC skillers would be pissed off though, because they would lose out on like EHP. But fuck them.
right.
I'm sorry, but fuck them.
Yeah, it's like the look, just because you don't get to interact with a new system that benefits other people in terms of like time played, like doesn't mean that it shouldn't come into the game.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, like, yeah, fuck them, like you said. But that was one thing that I like personally get like not necessarily giddy over, but it is that cool idea. It's like, I mean, imagine, right? Like we get to sort of set what happens in terms of leveling up this new skill, right? I mean, Jagex is going to be the ones to cultivate the entire um, community's opinion and kind of put it into something, and then we vote on whether or not we like it or not. But if the baseline idea of sailing was literally just sail to an island and do dungeoneering, and now the whole world is open to us, and so the farther that you have to travel on your boat, the more experience you get for going to that island, doing this one thing, whatever, it doesn't become linear anymore. And it's just this sort of like, again, the exploration element of it is something that I think is nice and something that no one will know. Like, I hope that when this does come out, and I don't think that they would, but they usually talk about like, oh, Guardians of the Rift is going to come out. We're going to give it this amount of experience per hour, right? That they don't do that because obviously the methods won't be live. They'll have an idea of how they want people to train it and like have an idea of what they want their XP per hour to be, but no one will know 100%, right? And I think there's beauty in that because it then boils people down to, okay, somebody tried this, it worked better than this, right? Um and I just think there's something I don't know, man, like beautiful's not the right word, but there's just the air of exploration and discovery is something that I have longed for in this game ever since I played it as a kid. And I felt that on certain updates, but like I've probably been at this point, I wouldn't necessarily say burned more than I've been enjoying the game, but I don't know, because that's another thing too. Once you're 99 sailing, are you still going to enjoy it? Maybe to an extent you'll be interacting with different content, or you'll be
Some people
interacting
would
with the
though,
content in
like
a different
some
way.
post 99 skilling we do. Like you still do mining, you still do herb lore.
Yeah,
Like and
yeah.
it's useful, but like maybe you get good drops from it. Who knows?
Mhm. One thing also, is that the other reason why I like sailing, and again, I guess horizon's the limit if you wanted to, um, whatever. That was a bed. It's whatever. Anyway, sky's the limit. Okay, um, because ultimately, when you boil it down, the I think it's the factor of islands or just like content at sea that is explosive because you could still implement, like, again, you could totally implement the dungeoneering idea, right? But maybe in a different way. What if you just had like, once you hit certain sailing levels, um again, I kind of like the idea of like almost having tasks that you complete on certain islands that gives you a base amount of experience. I mean, you kind of put it in the framework of being uh of being of being Slayer to an extent because you're doing like task based stuff, but I like the idea of things being like you can lock certain things behind certain content. That way it's not like farmable. That makes it less um you know not necessarily profitable, but like for example, okay? Um I like the idea of having dungeons on islands, right? That would work similar to like a corrupted gauntlet, right? So, because if you look at our game, right, you basically have your content is you can kind of
I
separate it
think what you mean is
into
you want it to be like randomly generated. That's what you mean. Not always the
no, no.
same thing.
Well, I think randomly, yeah. So there's an element to that to it, but my point in saying it is this: even if you had a dungeon that was static, like a challenge mode, right? Um, our game right now has like bosses that you kill within like a minute, right? from your God Warses to your Vorkaths and other shit, right? Okay, so 1 to 2 minute kills. So I think that you can lump um, content specifically when it comes to PVM into into like groups, right? So your kill speeds that are 1 to 2 minutes, and less, I guess. Your like Fasani nightmares that are like 7 minutes. Is there anything else that's like that? I guess Corrupted Gauntlet
That's like
or
the fight
Gauntlet
is
in
like 6 to 7 minutes
general.
long.
Yeah, exactly. And then
There's
you
not
have
much, honestly.
exactly. And then you have your raids, right? And then raids, depending upon how you're running them, are anywhere between 30 minutes to like 45 minutes, right? Again, depends upon the efficiency and the method that you're doing, right? But if you're talking about like, um, technically, if you're doing like speed solos, like 22-minute challenge for chambers, not challenge mode, but just chambers in general is like a relatively decent speed, maybe 22, no prep, shit like that. I don't know. I don't know much about speed, like because again, I don't do like normally if I'm doing a solo regular, even like team regular, you're in between like 25 minutes to 30 minutes. And then again, I don't go fast. So my like CM times are like solo CMs are like 40, 45. And then, the base that you're doing with other people's like in between like around 35, no, 30, 35, 40 maybe. I don't recall. Again, I
That's
wish
like
I had more.
that's
No,
like
I
an
wish,
average team. You can definitely get much faster though. You can get like
yeah,
all the way under like sub 25 minutes with a
let's
game
look
or
at it from,
two.
yeah, let's look at it from average team though. Right.
Yeah, like a 30
Um,
minute CM, like a 26-minute Toa, and like a 25-minute Tob. It's like
yeah.
basically the norm, which is quite
So
long, but it's still a good length, I find.
it is. But what does that mean that we're missing? We're missing the in between, right?
Like a 12
The
minute,
Yeah, the
15
12 to
minute.
15. Because here's the thing: when I'm looking at content to do, like one of the reasons why I don't necessarily go to Toa and do it all day long is because I know that it's just going to take me time to get one KC, right? And I'm going to get to the end of that KC, I'm going to get garbage loot, and then it's going to kill my will to do it. Um, so it's something that I steer clear from. So your dopamine hits happen a lot more frequently when you're killing the stuff that's a lot easier to kill. But then sometimes that gets boring whenever you again. There's a pro and a con to doing everything within this game. Okay, but my point is that when it comes to dungeons, you could have a level of what you were talking about earlier, where you have the randomly generated stuff so that it keeps the content fresh. But you could also have dungeons that take within 7 to 15 minutes to complete, right? They could have static paths, whatever you wanted, right? You could have certain dungeons that are randomly generated, certain dungeons that are static paths, and then you can get just like unique rewards for completing them. Because the one thing that our game does not have, and again, this is just an idea, right? Pseudo just rambling things out there because I think that it's just like really what happens with this is like just throw ideas out there until certain things stick and people see what people like by just bringing things up, right? Whole point of brainstorming. But with this is that you have like a set dungeon like a WoW, right? I have very fond memories of running like the early dungeons in WoW, and those are static pieces of content, but I still enjoyed running them, right? So, and if you look at that again, different game, different framework. Um, WoW is just a leveling, right? And so you're basically past that dungeon after a couple of runs of it, if that, right? But with this, you could have this dungeon have basically, again, I'm looking at it from the perspective of challenge mode raid layout, but not being a challenge mode raid. So basically what it would be is like you'd have Tecton, Crabs, Ice Demon, and then your final boss would be Shamans, right? So you could have a static path for that.
And then
And
the
then,
same final boss.
yeah, yeah, I mean that's what Hunlith is, right? But you just build it within different timings to complete, right? Maybe you have different, maybe like you could even put it to where like every time you enter the dungeon, there's a different set of I like there's this different set of shit. What am I looking for? There's a different set of like tasks to complete within the dungeon that you go to before you can unlock the last boss, right? So you're keeping it clean and keeping it different. So like from this perspective, right? You would travel to an island, go into a dungeon, and then complete that dungeon. But you could also build it into islands themselves, right? You go to the island, you have to help the locals fend off attacking cougars, right? Do this, that. Help them build up their base camp. Once their base camp is built up, then um, a fucking volcano explodes again, just like something happens, like a rock slide happens and opens up a den of a beast that you then go in and kill, right? So like you just have a bunch of different ideas that you can build within um, sailing that doesn't necessarily have to be the randomly generated content, but can be the unique dungeons. Because I like the idea of dungeons. We have a lot of dungeons in old school. Like the only dungeon that they've added that has been like that old school style was Sarachnis, right? Like that's it.
Yeah, but I don't really think that counts too much as a. I mean, it is a dungeon, but like,
It's a dungeon from the old school way of thinking about dungeons.
yeah,
I want dungeons that are sort of a mix of new and old school because I think running content like WoW's dungeons in old school could be interesting. Now, the only caveat to this is again because of the reward system in our game is slightly different. Um, it's it's just it would be hard to find where the rewards would come from and what they would be, right? Because you obviously wouldn't want this items to come from these dungeons, right? Because they would be kind of helping you level through. And then on top of that, what you could do is like resource based stuff, right? We already have like a lot of resource givers right now. But if sailing does end up coming out, um, you could make specific items from those dungeons be not necessarily grindable. So like, let's talk about doubloons, right?
wait, this dude
Let's
what
say
he
that.
just wrote is really interesting.
What do you say?
Uh, Ag
That'd be really
Taylor, he
interesting.
says, what I would really like to be interested in, what I would really like to be interested in is a system where you get cards slash tablets slash maps from skilling or combat, and then you put them together to create basically a dungeon.
Ooh,
That's pretty cool. I like that. That's actually
that's
really cool.
that is a super interesting idea. That's basically, I think,
That's basically summoning because you're collecting charms, but your charms are used to generate dungeons or I guess like maps to sail. Because you obviously wouldn't be going sailing blindly. You'd want to have a map, so that would be really cool.
right.
I like
Well, that's
that.
another thing.
That's
Like, yeah,
clever.
that's a unique. Um, that would be like those could be like rare materials that you get from training skilling, right? And then, like you said, you have these individual ideas that you can combine into one thing, and then complete a piece of content based off of that, right? That's a pretty cool idea. To be fair,
Yeah, the bigger most part you put together, the bigger the reward, but the harder the boss fight,
yeah,
or like the harder the sailing encounter, or the higher level
that
you need, or whatever. Maybe like level 20, you could put 3 pieces. Level 30, you could put 4 pieces, and so on.
yeah. No, I think that's a great idea, and especially yeah, because then again, and here's one thing. I don't think content necessarily needs to be consistent through everything, because ultimately, what makes it unique is the fact that it could be slightly different. So you don't always have to. Shit, where was this point going? It was specific. Fuck. Damn it. Like grindable content, that's what I was trying to go for, right? Like it doesn't have to be the same. So like say that you had to, if you did go for the card tablet map idea, right? That would be something that you couldn't really grind, you know what I mean? Because you'd have to essentially grind out those individual like pieces to be able to make the same thing to grind that. And you wouldn't be able to say just go to bandos and grind out your rewards from that and then be done with it, right?
Like you can't
You'd
stack it.
have
That's
to.
what you mean. You can't stack the.
Exactly. Yeah. It would like you couldn't you yeah, it wouldn't be like
Oh, so
like
imagine you get
exactly.
imagine like each boss and each PVM monster gives their own specific type, kind of like blue, green,
There you
yellow
go.
charms, and then you can only combine X amounts of each. So you need to
Well, you could
combine
do it.
like two dragon types, one specter type. I don't know. I'm just spitballing
Yeah.
random shit. That's
Oh,
cool
exactly.
too. And imagine if like your focus, you're more of a skiller, and then you have like skiller uh, cards or tablets as well. Like imagine you have like woodcutting maps where it tells you like the best trees in Ulanor are located in this island here, and then you go there and it's basically like a similar encounter to an ant. Maybe you have to kill it, maybe not. Maybe you have to like burn it or something, and then you get logs.
Yeah.
Like, dude, like shit like that is awesome, dude.
Right.
And if you're
Another thing.
rewarded is like supplies, I think that's another issue too. You don't want to be rewarded with supplies because then you're already rewarded with supplies everywhere in this game. But
Right.
I think it's still a cool concept. Like maybe
Well, that's
get
my
more
point.
XP
Like
instead. Maybe get a bonus in like fishing XP.
your rewards, let's do it this way. The rewards that you're getting from all of the sailing content is not your normal rewards, right? It's not your logs, it's not your things like that. What if you just got doubloons, right? And that was like a form of currency that you directly utilized to interact with sailing.
You can buy stuff with that, kind of like in Dungeoneering with the point system.
Exactly.
Oh, that's cool too.
That's one
But then you have
idea.
to
That would
develop
help
a lot
you.
of rewards, and then you have to balance the rewards from being like purchasable several times, not just a one and done.
Well,
Like you have to buy
exactly.
charges and stuff like that, and
Again, I think that it could just be one thing to help alleviate the idea of I go to a deal, I'm farming magic trees, I'm just getting magic logs, or like say that you were to complete dungeons. The only real way that you could make dungeons worthwhile to do is to give people a resource, um, like a resource, sorry, reward, right? And eventually, either that'll get stale or it'll just be bad because, like, again, I had like half of the late game pieces of content for whatever reason give potato cactus. Okay, I got 23k potato cactus. I don't need any more potato cactus, right? So every time I get potato cactus, it's gonna make me mad. You're not
I
mad,
have
but like I'm just gonna be like,
21,000, dude, and I have
it's just
29,000 magic potions.
yeah, it's just fucking worthless, right? So the doubloons, kind of similar
Dude,
to
they're
other things
42
that they've
GP
added into
each.
the game.
Bro, the potato cactus used to be like 800 each.
You got a lot of
Wow,
content.
dude,
I mean, they also came out with the plant too, right? Which is probably where I've gotten the majority of mine.
that's crazy. But I think it's because Toa shits him out too.
Yeah, yeah.
That's crazy.
So shut the fuck up, Jimsons.
Freaking hot dog. Do I ban him?
I think so. Yeah, I
Alright,
think
dude.
perm actually. Yeah,
Done.
that's it.
Sit, fuck you.
Um, but yeah, I think that for me personally, one of the reasons why I was so
It was a
excited about
troll,
a
by
new
the way. If people were asking, it's a troll.
yeah,
Everyone's
yeah.
like, holy.
Hot dog's a friend. I
He's
might
in
air
the
quote that.
CC.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, I think that the discovery is really what people are looking for. And if you played previously when new content would come out, that discovery of finding what was a good method to train something, what some reward potential was, again, in the perspective of summoning, like what dropped charms, there was so much there that equated to a good time for me. Even though, like, when you look at summoning as a skill in general, that kind of just broke the game wide open, right? But I remember pogging off whenever I got Unicorn Stallion because I was like, oh my god, I can finally go to Dagonoth Kings and do a trip longer than like 5 kills, right? And now I can do an entire task because all I have to do is sit there, and if I'm getting low, you can Blood Barrage or SGS spec, and then you're killing things in a way that, like, again, we're just so like, it's just crazy how much better we are. So certain things that could come out now would completely break the game because, again, now that we understand the game to a certain extent, it's harder to balance the new content around kind of mystery, right? At least when it comes to in-game systems. Just harder to do that. So it's like, what do you do at that point? So I just think sailing in general has a lot of potential, which is one of the reasons why I'm excited about it if it does end up coming into the game. I'm also excited to hear other people's perspectives and opinions because I think that one of the great things about just collaboration in general, is that the way that one person looks at the game versus the way that I look at it is completely different. Um, and sometimes my ideas are cooked, and I can kind of be, redirected on a different way to season that opinion, or same thing with other people, right? Just being like hearing certain things and you're like, that is actually one of the dumbest things I've ever heard in my life, and this is why. And then, but you try and do it constructively so that you can actually have a legitimate conversation around it, because that's the only thing that's going to make it worthwhile, and healthy for the game, is to truly have those conversations to be like, okay, what is going to break it? Is 8 max hits from a new prayer book really going to benefit us in the long term or the short term, right? Because, hey, who doesn't want to hit 8 more max hits? Who doesn't want to almost break 100 damage with a Tebow slap, right? I mean, that would be fun for me. But what happens in another year when they're like, hey, we haven't gotten any new content, we want another piece of gear? Where do you go?
Yeah, it's just gonna get worse and worse. That's why it's a dangerous step. Bozzy GM. Dude, Shady's been complaining about components the whole time. No, I'm just kidding.
I don't have to complain about it, man. I got a lot of components, buddy.
It's a 079 podcast episode 12, components. That's it.
Components, that was it. So yeah, dude. I'm excited. I think the game's heading in a good spot. I'm very interested to see how Desert Treasure goes down. If anything, that's another thing too. The continuation of the Majorat storyline is truly a continuation of, like, I don't know, man, dude. I just love this game. I have so many fond memories of it, and especially like, because that's another thing too. It's like we never get to interact with this content the first way that we did ever again. You know what I mean?
It's never gonna be the same. It's impossible to reproduce that.
Yeah, I have so many fond memories of being just a dumbass kid, doing some real donkey tech that no one knew was donkey tech, but everyone was like, "Oh yeah, man, I love it." I think in the entirety of my account, on like before old school servers came out, so like on the track of RS3, like I recall being in middle school, consistently killing metal dragons because I always wanted a draconic visage drop. And I think I probably killed over 25, at the time I probably thought it was 25,000 kills. I'm pretty sure it was probably closer to like 9.
Yeah, but it felt like forever, because that's like
it felt like forever. Dude, I remember going to house parties with my parents and asking if the people we went to the party had a computer so that I could play RuneScape.
Dude, I remember when I was visiting my grandparents on my mom's side, I would always go play RS on their computer. Fuck, man, that was good times, dude.
Dude,
And like I had an older cousin, he was like 7 years older, and he was playing too, and he was always like showing me like he was like much better gamer back then, and he was always telling me like, dude, what the fuck like I remember at one point he like opened my bank and we were like sitting next to each other, and I had 300 wheat in my bank, and he's like, why do you have wheat? And I'm like, I don't know, I picked them up. And he's like, why? I'm like, I don't know, I just kind of felt like picking them up. My dumbass picked 12 inventories of wheat. Why? I don't know, man. I thought it was... I don't know. I actually don't know why I picked that up. But he dropped them. And I remember I was like, why? No, we have to keep them.
Dude, I remember... it's the same thing. Like when I was at... So like when I used to... Me and my cousin Caleb... Caleb was the guy... Like... It's kind of a crazy story behind this, but basically I started playing RuneScape and I told my cousin Caleb about it. And I ended up giving him the account that I had made initially, and then making a new one to like level up to where he was at so that we could play together. And then Caleb went to our grandmother and was like, hey, would you pay for membership? And she said yes to him because he was her favorite, right? Out of like all the grandkids. And then he came to me and he was like, hey, man, I got grandma to pay for our membership. Do you want to share an account? And that way you can play as a member and then level up the account, because he knew that I would play way more than he would, right? And then so he would just, account share before it was okay to do. So not the account that I'm on now. Dude. Don't ban me, Jagex. That unfortunately that account is banned now. But so I have so many fond memories of just like shooting the shit with Caleb and like on Skype or Vent or what was the other one used back in the day? TeamSpeak.
Oh yes, TeamSpeak.
and like going to grandma's house. I remember when I think it was one of the storylines of the Xanax storyline where you got to go to this weird place and there was like an upgraded ancient mace that was like a I think it was like I don't recall what it was. I don't recall what it was called. But I remember going there and it was new content essentially like the week of release, and um I was just farming these like marble orcs, getting the new staff or the new mace and selling it on the GE for giga profit because it was a new item. Nobody knew anything about it, right? Um, and I remember saying out loud, man, I love this game. And my grandmother correcting me, being like, you shouldn't say that you love an inanimate object. It's like, what the fuck, grandma?
And you're like, watch me.
Yeah. So just I mean, hey, hard committed now because I don't do anything but play the stupid game. But it's like
Dude, just a random tangent. Like people in the chat, they're saying like they used to pay for membership with their phones or by mailing it. Dude,
Yep.
Holy, that was. I remember trying to explain to my parents that it wasn't a scam.
Right.
And then they were like, "So you're sending like 6? I don't remember how much it was. I don't remember.
It was $5. It was $5.
It was
People are
Canadian
still
dollars. It was like
grandfathered
$7 or something. And I was like,
I guess that's right.
I was like, no, we just sent $7 like by phone. My mom's like, you have to do it in person, you know. And I was like, I can't. They're in the like at that. I don't remember where it was. I just said like they're on the other side of the country or something because I didn't know. I didn't understand like or it was in a different fucking continent.
Yep.
But holy dude, that taught me a lot about sales, dude. Man, dude, I miss that.
It's just again times that you'll never get back, and there's not necessarily any way to recultivate that. But like, I think
my mom refused to pay for membership until I had max free to play. Don't think she realized how evil that was.
Oh my god,
dude, that's so rough.
It's so funny.
Oh man.
But yeah, there's no real way to cultivate that experience that we had as idiot kids because we're different people now. Like we interact with the game differently. You know that once some form of efficient method comes out and people recognize that it is, everyone's going to do it, right?
Some idiot's going to make a video about it saying that it's the meta, it's twice as better as Sarachnis for Elite Clues, and then everyone's going to be like, oh, that's the efficient thing to do. You know, that's what you mean, Shady?
Are you talking about this Callisto method that you're currently interacting with right now?
Maybe.
But yeah. But I think that, it's like, the thing that I think that you can relive with the new skill implementation is truly just the sort of recaptivating that old style of nobody knows what's like. I think when New World was coming out, like not to pivot games, but like I played more of the beta of New World than I did the actual release.
Dude, everyone was playing the beta of that world. It was crazy.
Yeah.
What happened? Did the game die or something?
It's just bad.
I guess it went to shit
bad.
with updates.
Yeah, and it doesn't really it didn't have many updates, and the problem is that if you get to level 5 on New World, when you get to max level, you're doing all the content that you did at level 5. Like there's no new content. It's like you're just doing the exact same thing. So there is no real end game. There is like now because you have dungeons and stuff, but it just the thing I liked about humanity like New World was that when I was playing the beta, like you have so much broken shit, right? Like there was an ability on that game that was I can't remember what it was called, but like you basically shot 5 arrows at a time, but only utilized 1, and the cooldown was so small, and if you were on like a large target, you could basically stack up a bunch of effects that could one-shot things that had like 5k health.
Bruh.
When other people just sat there struggling with it, right? It's like that shit's fun. Like playing a broken game in that capacity for only that amount of time when people don't know anything else is fun. Now, you don't want to keep that there. There's no way you just got a second Pharaoh Callisto clause.
Dude, what a meme, bro. The second one this podcast. What the fuck, dude?
That's really funny, dude. That's that shady luck, buddy.
I mean, can I get other things? Like, I think that's number 4.
That's so funny. But yeah, so But yeah, I mean, it's just, dude, it's interacting with content on day of release is something that you only get, or like even just like it depends upon the content as to the longevity of it. Get wrecked. Um, but I forget there's a delay, so I just said get wrecked. Probably did nothing. I was saying that to you losing your food.
Yeah, I think I yanked it.
um, but getting to experience something like that, completely fresh, is something that you very rarely get to do, but is something that, as like, you know, a gamer or just somebody who enjoys this medium, it's I feel like it's a feeling like nothing else. It's one of the reasons why killing a boss on release is so enjoyable, right? Because not only is it giga um profitable because nobody knows anything, right? Like what was Heart? What was the new Heart? 150k essence was like 80 mil?
Yeah, at
Something like
first, yeah, it
that?
was insanely expensive on
Yeah.
release.
So it's like, we interact with the game differently because we're Iron Men, right? So it's literally just like an upgrade for us. But for mains,
That was
um,
insane money per hour, dude.
yeah, I had a friend that was like, I feel like I need better gear to be able to do this and stuff like that. I was like, dude, can you afford a Bofa? He was like, I think so. I think I have one. I was like, okay, I will get you a gear setup that is nothing. And you can go to this boss right now, and regardless of the kills that you can get an hour, you will just profit.
Yeah, every kill you're just guaranteed money with the essence. It
Yeah.
was nuts. I remember a lot of people in Oblivion, they were grinding that on release for money and to learn
I
like
mean,
the efficient ways and all that.
because that's the thing, right? It's like everything, like the Void Waker. Like, had I sold all my Void Waker gems, well, I mean, I guess I kind of got them over the day, but like, had I
Yeah, you could
sold
have
all my
made
Void
bank
Waker
for each
pieces
one,
when I
like two,
got them,
300 mil each if you
yeah,
sold them on release. But of course, like we wouldn't do that as irons because you need the item unless you got a dupe like super early on.
exactly. Which I theoretically did for the gems, but again, I just decided to keep it because why not? But again, everybody plays it a different way. But when it comes to experiencing that stuff for the first time, you can only have the release only happens once, you know? Um and then at that point they're either just going to nerf it or buff it. Like I
Most
think they've
likely nerf
reworked
it.
exactly,
They
right?
changed their mentality. In the past, they used to like make updates and make it really strong and then nerf it, and then they realized that that was not a smart approach. Now I
I
feel like they're doing
remember
the opposite. They make it weak at the release and then they buff it eventually.
yeah.
Because if you nerf
Yeah.
something, people get really demotivated. But if you buff something, people get extremely motivated. That's the thing
Yeah.
about this game and most things in life.
Mhm.
It's like if a
Yeah, I mean if you
company like Netflix nerfs, which instead of saying nerf will say increases prices, people get pissed off because they're
yeah.
like, now I have to pay fucking $2 more a month. But imagine if Netflix did the opposite. They're like, okay, starting now, your membership is $1 cheaper. Dude, everyone's gonna be like, hell yeah, that's cool. It's a buff.
Yep.
People are gonna join the platform. They're gonna be excited. So it's the same concept applies in video games, just in a different fashion. If you nerf
Yeah.
something, people get pissed off. I remember when they nerfed Toa after the first week. I didn't do Toa for a full week. I was like, fuck this. This is stupid. And then they eventually put it back.
Wait, what was this? What are you talking about?
The Toa nerf. You remember they nerfed Toa and everyone got pissed off, and then they reverted the nerf.
Oh, you mean with like with
Like you're
the
doing
like
5 down
Ambrosia's?
core. Like it was really bad.
Oh my God, yeah, I did. Okay, sorry. I think I tried to block that out of my memory. I
Dude,
do
that was
remember that.
so bad, dude.
Yeah.
Like, and then they corrected it. That was
Which
But they
yeah,
they they're very careful now when they nerf things.
yeah. Because that's the thing. I mean, like you're right. Like if people feel like you are nerfing the content that they are interacting with, it's definitely going to be a significantly worse reaction than if you're like, "Hey guys, we recognize that this isn't as good as we wanted it to be. Here you go." Um, even with Muspa,
Bro,
like
what the fuck is
Muspa is still
happening, dude?
broken. What happened?
Just got Dragon 2H. Shady, what's happening? I think
You
this
just give
method
me.
is broken. What the fuck?
That's another thing too, by the way, just to hit another note. If like in terms of shamanism, if they did end up going with like some upgrades that you could utilize components for, um, like that clause drop could actually be Pog. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that could be
Like,
like good amount of components and whatever
yeah,
invention
past
seal.
the first one. So, you know, is what it is. But yeah, um, But yeah, no, I mean, yeah, if it feels like a nerf, no one's gonna be happy. Um, so, and then again, only being able to interact with a piece of content for the first time once. I think that with a skill, it's so expansive that you're gonna interact with it for much longer than people like. Because the other thing too is like because of the fact that um your XP is gonna scale as you level, it's gonna end up being slightly different from like where you're at, right? So it's going to be a lot harder to find the efficient methods because as you're gaining experience, that might be changing. You might find another thing, one thing here, there. You can't find your meta whenever you're level 25 versus when you're level 50, and then as it continues to exponentially, go. So,
I
which is
think the
always
meta
the
is going
fun
to be
thing. Like
found
you have
really
races.
fast for the new skill whenever it's released. I think people are going to figure it out super quickly.
I think it depends upon how many options they give to train it.
Yeah, I
You
hope they
know.
give it like a intensive and an AFK option because I feel like most HLC people they want an intensive option, and most of like the mid level and low level gamers in the game they want an AFK option, or
Yeah.
just fair. Like I sometimes like the AFK as well. Like I'm not always playing high intensity, so if they give both options, it gives people the choice.
Well, I think it's. I mean, yeah, good. Like, because that's the other thing too. I like this game. Like, half of the reason this game is interesting and like enjoyable is because there's a portion of it that you literally don't play. You know, when people ask me, like, when people are like, when I tell people that I play RuneScape, I tell them that I play a 2004 medieval clicker with rhythm game elements. That's all this game is. Like, you have elements where you can just literally sit there and AFK and the game plays itself, or you actually interact with it to where you get your progression a little bit more exponentially um, progress. Like like it goes a lot quicker. The thing that makes this game so good is that there isn't one way of doing things. Like you have options and you have methods that you can choose to interact with. So if you're not feeling like you know however many ticking granite. What is it? Three ticking?
Yeah,
Yeah,
three
there
tick
you go.
four
Three
G.
ticking granite. Um, that you can just go to Motherlode Mine, right? Um, so the the fact that you have opportunities to train it in different ways, I think, is good. So it'll open up opportunities for people to decide what they want to do, interact with the content how they see fit. Now, it may be a requirement to do, right? You kind of brought that up earlier, is that you're going to feel obligated to train it. Hopefully, it's fun enough to train that people will enjoy it. Um, but I mean, I think you could make an argument that for the most part, every piece of content within old school there is a requirement to train it unless you're a main, right? If you're a main, you could probably just get your like if you're a main, theoretically speaking, all you would need to do is train your combat stats to max. If you're doing chambers, get your herbalore up, and then some bosses like Sarah require you to have a skilling requirement on agility, right? So you could essentially, if you wanted to play the game like that, totally could. Um, but if you're an iron, you're definitely a little bit more inclined to go do certain methods like Slayer. I know my roommate fucking hates Slayer, which is crazy because I think it's like most people's, maybe not most people's, but a good majority of people's like favorite
Oh yeah,
skill.
for sure. It's one of the best skills.
Um, and that's only because you have the bosses that get unlocked, right? Because like base
It has
level
so much
Slayer when you're killing
options.
ghouls.
There's always variety. Like you're not doing 10 hours of Mud Alone Mine. You're doing
Yep.
like an hour of Abbey Demons, an hour of this, an hour of that.
Yeah.
You're always hopping
So
around.
and then with the implementation of superior creatures, now there's always an opportunity that you might get lucky and get something insane.
Yeah.
You've got some clog slots for people who are interested in that. Um, so overall, pretty well rounded, pretty well balanced, and I like the fact that you have pieces of content that are locked behind. Like Hydra's at 95, right? That's obviously good. Um, and it allows people to be able to balance the rewards from that content based on what it takes to be able to get to that content. Um, So I think that that's another thing to keep in mind, right? Because while when if sailing does come into the game, the first time that it comes out, maybe the first time that you get to kill a boss in sailing, like let's say it's 35, right? Um, and then they could make it a fucking fire giant boss. Why not, right?
Ice
Um,
giant boss. Let's go.
yeah, ice giant, fire giant, whatever. The only giants that we don't have as bosses yet. Um, why not? Give it to them. Not going to be too crazy. You'll be able to interact with it. It'll be fun. You get some bullshit, dumb early game weapon. Because that's another thing too, is that I've often thought about. Like I still have a lot of grinding to do on my main account, but as I continue and continue and continue, there's just now that I'm maxed, there's just that element of like I want to experience the feeling of leveling again. And I haven't got that. And I could make a new account, but it's like, what am I going to do? Just make another Iron Man? That'd probably be what I do. But am I going to do anything differently? Like, I'm just going to be ultimately going for the exact same goals, right? Like,
Yeah,
you're
it'll be the
just
same
working
thing.
towards maxing again. You're just experiencing it in a new way. So, like, if sailing does come out, which I think that it will.
You're for sure gonna see
Um,
also like content creators do a sailing locked accounts, like
which
snowflakes.
wouldn't that be so fucking
That'd be
cool?
kind of cool too. Yeah.
I think depending upon what some of the rewards are and stuff like that, I think that it's going to be dope, you know?
Dude, I have a
Um,
really dumb idea for a snowflake account. Very stupid. Do you want to hear it?
mm, please.
So what you do is you make a Tob locked Iron Man. You make a level 3 Iron. You rush all the quests. You go straight to Tob. You find 2 gamers to carry you through Tob. And you do 2+1 Tobs while punching the bosses. And then you just hope that you snipe purples.
So dumb,
And
dude.
then like you slowly train your combat stats through punching shit. And you get blood runes for your Sang if you ever get a Sang from drops. You get combat XP for your Scythe and Rapier. You'd have to use Uncharged Scythe until you get like the vials and blood runes and shit. You'd have no supplies except buying from the chest.
So fucking ridiculous. I mean, like this game is make your own fun. You know what I mean? Like you can play it however you want. The efficiency that comes with the new methodology of the game, I think for me sometimes kills it because I feel like Toa, for example. I think it's cool that you can scale. I think that we've talked about this before. They should have absolutely capped drop rate. Um, to be only like a 1 in 8 or like a 1 in 5, whatever, regardless of how far you get up there. And then the only thing that scales is your base level loot.
Well,
So
I think it was initially well scaled. The only issue is that people were complaining that like you had like the drop it was only favoring 150s. And then Jagex was like, okay, they changed it and then they changed the scaling and they made Higher Invocation be significantly better and then that just broke it.
yeah,
Because 8-man 400, it's a 1 in 2 chance to see a purple. 1 in 2.
that's my that is fucking
That's
stupid.
insane. You
That's
do 2
literally
raids,
game breaking.
you don't you get 2 white chests and you can complain because you're overrate now. That's so
Like
dumb. And it's so
yeah.
stupid too because you do other content like Tob and Chambers. You
Yep.
do 4 raids, white chest, and you get pissed. You're like, what the fuck? Where's the purples?
Yeah. I think as from the perspective of the content, I like the mechanics. I like the ideas that Toa came forward with. Um, I think it was just implemented in the wrong way. Now, of the content that came into the game, maybe Toa was the one to find out. Kind of fuck around and find out because what do you get from Toa? Like the Fang is really good.
Everything's good,
The
dude. Even the shield is good. It's just
That's a good
people
point. That's a good point.
consider it shit because the other items are even stronger.
Yeah, that's true.
Everything's good.
So
Missouri, max hits, Shadow is just, I mean, just nothing to say. It's just fucking OP.
all right,
And
so
then
maybe it wasn't the content to do it with.
I think it's because the drop rates were like it shits out purples way too often. And if you look at the graph for prices of Toa drops, look at Missouri since release. It's been crashing nonstop.
Oh,
Fang
yeah.
has maintained its price around 40 mil. The only thing is that the Shadow's maintaining his price because it's just way too strong. So it's still 1.4 bill. But everything else has crashed so hard. Like Missouri's half in price. Like when I did Toa, when I started grinding for the Shadow, I was making 20 mil an hour. Just as a reference, I was doing the calcs. 8-man 400s, 20 mil an hour per person. Now it's around 14 mil an hour. It's still OP. It's still strong. But it's nowhere close to what it was like 6 months ago, which is crazy to think about, dude. It was 20 mil an hour, 8-man
Yeah.
400, and they're not even hard. Like, if you're like semi good at the game and you learn the mechanics, you can easily do 8-man 400s.
Well, that's the thing. I feel like the content is exponentially easier when you're in a bigger group. Like that
Yeah,
content.
it's easier because if you fuck
Yeah.
up and die, your team can just carry you.
Yeah.
That's it.
So the like it's just not even at that point. It's almost just moot on the risk versus reward. You know, like when they originally talked about that reward structure, I was thinking that they were going to do something like again rolling
The RS3
a
concept of
RS3
what was
concept
it
is
called
that
again? Enrage?
so they
No.
it's a form of that. So basically, there are certain bosses within that game that you can basically you so you kill a boss, right? It's in Rage's level 1, you get the kill. You get a loot, it goes to a chest. You then decide whether or not you want to continue to kill the boss where you do not loot the chest, and you risk that reward. And then upon deciding whether or not you want to take the loot or keep the loot in there and risk it, the system re-rolls and it throws a little like tracker on the screen. It does a roll, and then it tells you how much the boss enrages. So the idea is that you start out at enrage 1, and you go until you just struggle too much to complete the content, and then you think that you're going to die on the next kill, and then you pull out all the loot. But the thing about it is that the more the enrage goes up, the better the loot goes, right? So the loot potential, like the reward potential, is scaled based off of that. But the difference between that and what, speaking of Toa loot. The difference between that and this is the fact that there is no risk. The only risk would be if you're in a solo and you can't and you fucking lag at the end of Insanity and then you
And you
just get
die. Yeah,
one
but if you're in
shot,
a
right?
team, it
Like
doesn't matter. The team's gonna carry you most likely.
exactly. So that risk is not really there, and you can't know that on release because you as the developer probably you know the metas that you kind of want people to do, but they didn't expect people to be able to butterfly Akka, you know. The same thing if you look at like Nex on release, right? Like people were fucking door stalling.
Yeah,
Um,
that
you
was
know,
cool.
rest in peace. I wish we still had that, but you know, it's like as a developer, you can never fully know what something is gonna boil out
It's
to
like
be. Like
Chambers with the solo methods. There's no way that was intentional. There's
it
no
wasn't.
shot
It
Jagex
literally,
designed
yeah,
it for intentionally to be able to 4-0.
no. Some Giga gamer was like, I want to try and see if I can solo this, and then found a way. Which is honestly one of the reasons why I like soloing Chambers more than I like soloing Toa.
Yeah, I hate
Which
solo
is
Toa. It's shit.
yeah, which feels crazy because Toa was designed to be soloable to an extent, right? Because most of the mechanics are actually built within having that ability, right? You theoretically don't need another person because the whole idea of the chambers was you need to move the head to where you're not taking a bunch of damage. So there was skippable damage, but yeah, there was no way they ever saw anybody soloing that content, and then doing it to an extent where you could do it prepless, you know? So it's just they'll never be able to until they release the piece of content, they'll never truly be able to understand how the community is going to interact with it solely from the perspective of not even from like them having the people who are good enough to do that content to that level, but just the sheer number of people interacting with it. Because the amount of time that, like, let's just take one day, right? The amount of time, play time that people can interact with the content when you have let's even just the full development cycle of a piece of content from Jagex, right? The amount of people that are developing the game and interacting with it before it releases is probably less time played than the first day of the release.
Oh
Like in
yeah,
total,
for
right?
sure. It's only like a couple of JMods doing everything.
So even if they have people come in from outside, because I think they had Wook, Solo Mission, Bodhi, like some people go in and test Toa before it came out. I think Addy was out there
Yeah,
too, right?
Adicon too. They did the same thing for Todd, by the way. They had people come
Yep.
test.
Yep. Yeah, because people didn't realize that there was going to be a third set at Verdict, right?
Yeah,
I think is what it
it
was.
ended there. And ended
Yeah,
randomly. I remember. I think it was Lucid Dream was talking about that in the Save A
mhm.
cast.
Yeah. I remember when I think it was Bodhi's team when they got there, they kill it, and then they all basically like fucking take their hands off the keyboard and mouse because they're like, "Oh, we did it," and then it transforms into the spider. They're like, "Whoa, whoa, what?" And then I get back onto it. Um, kind of interesting. So from that perspective, you got to wait. I think they're also doing that with the new content, right? I think they'll probably end up doing that with every piece of content. They're just going to get the people who live in the UK who are like really good. I think they even talked to Sick Nerd about having him go in there too. So I don't really know. Like, I mean, Sick Nerd's been playing fucking RS3 for a long while now, which has been nice to see because I would not play that game, but I'll watch it on occasion and let somebody else do it. Um, but just getting a plethora of people who are from all walks of skill to be able to interact with the content, even though Sick Nerd's good, he hasn't played the game in a while, right? So if they're trying to get people to come back and be like, would you like this? Is this like a good continuation of like, because that's the thing, like Dragon, I really don't understand why Galvek wasn't a repeatable fight. Um, there's a boss right there that could have been a lot of fun to kill. Like we got Vorkath, that's great, but I just don't understand why Galvek that had more mechanics wasn't wasn't also given the same treatment, you know? Um I would even kill Galvek for like just a pet, you know? Like even if there was no other drops from it, like I think it would be cool. I still want that. Do you remember during this is so kind of off topic, but um given or not given, do you remember doing Recipe for Disaster? I think it's during the Lumbridge guide portion, when you have to find that tiny little dragon, the Fey dragon, you know what I'm talking about? And he flames your flambe.
Oh yes. Okay.
I want that thing as a pet.
I mean, you're right that was loot. They lost potential. They could have easily had Galvek be a repeatable fight and have
Yeah.
like any loot they wanted to it. Even if the loot is dog shit, they could have still had potential to add
Yeah.
content to the game.
Which I think they've learned the error of their ways because they're doing 4 repeatable bosses with this new piece of content,
Yeah, but
right?
that's fucking
So
overkill, dude. But yeah, we already talked
I
about that.
yeah. No, I mean I think but it's a good point to make because here's the thing, when you have 4 new pieces of content, you have to have reward potential come from all of it, and it's got to be a certain number of awards so that you don't feel like you're just doing the exact same thing over and over and over. So it becomes kind of a problem from that perspective. And it's like, what do you do from it from that point? So it's difficult. I don't even think when did the axe become an idea?
I
I
don't
don't
know, dude.
recall
I
that.
honestly, I didn't even know they were pulling an item. I just thought it was only the prayer book, and then I saw like the post with like the axe and all that, and I was like, bro, what the fuck?
I knew about Virtus. I knew about that. I think the axe was like an afterthought. I do not recall them talking about that whatsoever. Oh my god.
Like I just got slapped, dude.
Yeah, he did. um so, I think the axe is cool. I also think the axe is like
Yeah, I think
their
RNG did
whole
the
like
calcs on the axe, and it was like it would be good for Top before Scythe and better
yeah.
than Blade. And
Yep.
for reference, the axe is like I think you have to collect the 4 components from each boss, combine them like kind of like a Void Waker,
Mhm.
and every time you attack, it gains stacks, and each stack adds you DPS, and it can go up to 5 stacks. So obviously the DPS would probably be worse at 0 stacks, and then as you stack up to 5, you'll be hitting like best in slot or whatever the DPS
With
output would
yeah,
be.
with 0 stacks, I think Molgoat was saying that it was like worse than a whip. So you have to have it stacked up. But the other issue with the X2 is that for whatever reason, they've decided that they wanted to try and implement the low life meta with that item because
Oh
you
no,
basically to
scrap low life.
fully
Low
to
life is
fully
stupid.
stack to fully stack the to the charges, you have to expend 40 health.
Oh, you lose health by stacking it? Okay,
Yes.
I didn't look into it fully.
You lose 8 health per stack. You have to have 5, and then after 8 game ticks, you start losing stacks. Your special orb is replaced with the stacks though, And if you use the special attack, it basically heals you for the entire amount of health that you expended to get the stacks. However, you then turn it back into a shit item.
Uh,
Um,
it's an
and
interesting concept, but I don't think it'll be as long as it stays like a mid tier item and not best in slot. I'm okay with it.
I think it has a unique concept. I think the way that they go about with the stacking, I wish that you could stack it up once and then have it hold that. But if you also remove the item, you lose all the stacks.
Or make it stack and it's not 8 game ticks. Oh, dude, fuck.
Yeah. I think that honestly, well, I don't know.
Like
One idea that I had,
make it so it doesn't reset after 8 game ticks. Make it like stay for like 100 ticks, which is a minute.
yeah.
So then that way you
Bef-
don't actually like you can still like run because 8 ticks that means you run between maiden and bloat and you lose everything.
Exactly. No, it's like if you, because that's the other thing too. Like basically, if you don't want to just lose 40 health, you have to sit at 60, well, I guess 59, and then before it phase shifts, use the special attack to make your weapon garbage again, get your health back, to then only expend it to build up the stacks again. I also think it's a 5-tick weapon, if I'm not mistaken. So the amount of time it takes you to get it stacked up.
Yeah, your DPS is dog. So probably like
Yeah.
on top, it probably won't even be as good as it seems because you'd have to account for the stacking procedure.
I look at it from the perspective of utilizing it at bloat. I don't even think you'd get all your stacks up.
Yeah, you'd lose it as in between bloat phases, like bloat downs. That's true.
So if they extended the stack, like if they extended how long the stacks last for, and just like said like it's a perma, like once you get 5 stacks, as long as you don't take the weapon off, you have them permanently.
That would be cool too, because then you could like you can like stack it at the end of bloat, and you have a free heal for like Nilo that you have to use.
But that's the
But
only
you
other
have to,
thing
you
too.
can't
Is
unequip
like
it though. You're right. So that's
exactly.
true.
So if you unequip it, then you lose all of them. So I think it's an interesting concept. I think it just came out of nowhere. I don't remember them talking about it at all. But when you're talking about, here's the other thing too. Okay, bringing it back around to talking about the new prayer books in terms of like power creep. If you have items like that that have genuine risk versus reward, there's an element of you kind of get rid of the power creep to an extent, right? Obviously, it's still a powerful item, but the annoyance of using an item is definitely taken into account with the like use of it, right? So, let's say, for example, one of the ways that they wanted to try and continue to balance the new prayer book. If we think that 8 max hits is too much, what I would agree it is. I think it's 8 max hits if you're using a Tebow, right?
Yeah, something along those lines.
What if they were
Probably
like,
more.
okay, fuck it. We'll make it this powerful, but now the prayer only blocks 80% of incoming damage. It's just fucking annoying. Just be horrible, right? Even 10% is bad. It's just like, but your risk versus reward utilizing something like that would be taken into account. So then it would be like, okay, I definitely don't want to use it here, right? But then you'd only be able to use it at places that hit you like 20s, right? Because then you would just be taking 4s.
Yeah, but
40,
people
40,
would
stuff
still
like
like
that.
find a way to out-sustain it. I think there's
I
like
mean,
so much potential of items that can give. Like the game is so like primitive in terms of like special buffs you can gain. Like if you
right.
look at games like League of Legends, like there's so many items that give you so many interesting buffs that are all unique in their own ways.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this game can build up for that.
For sure.
Like the Blood Fury concept is really cool, but I think they can do something. Like imagine a weapon that every time you kill a monster, like the yellow Karis, you gain like 1 health and like 2 prayer points. And then you'd always use that weapon to finishing blow. To gain like sustain. Like there's so much little things you can do like that.
Yeah. When I heard about the axe,
Oh,
before I knew
Pog.
when I heard about the axe, before I realized that the spell book or the new prayer book was like OP as shit, because again we talked about this at the beginning, how everyone was like it's bad, right? I thought if they implemented this axe, something that they could do uniquely is that rather than having it expend your health to stack up, maybe it does expend health, right? But you could just take the axe with you wherever you go, and you would be losing out on DPS because you would use it as like a heal basically. So you could stack up everything, and rather than be like a 40 heal, you could be like a 20 heal when you stack it up twice. But or just like something like that to where you're bringing an item that's worse to then try and counter the non-benefit of using the other ability. Now, I only thought about that when we thought the new prayer book was bad, and I ultimately think that that's a bad idea, because it basically forces you to take that item everywhere that you go if you can melee something to be able
Fuck,
to
I need a second,
regenerate
dude.
health.
Give me a second.
You're good.
Well, that's fucking great. I just died. Oh, sorry.
No, you're good. Are you good?
Yeah, I was getting
Doing
fucking
cool?
calls, and the dude kept calling me, and I was like, something's wrong. But I might have to end soon. Well, at least I kept my Call of Callisto.
No worries, man. But yeah, I think that specialty effects, if we're being real for like longevity of the game and not implementing incredible power creep, I think is probably one of the best ways to do it. I think it's pretty nuanced on how you'd be able to get there, but yeah. So that's basically that point. Was there anything else? I mean, if you might have to end soon, I think we pretty much talked about everything, right?
Yeah, we went into shit ton of tangents though, but that's fun. That's part of podcasting. So
Hey, you called me on, man. That's like my whole thing, dude. I feel like during conversations, I just like I'm driving down the highway. I take
no
a
shot,
random
dude. There's like
exit.
7 PKs here.
Uh-oh, boys. You don't lose that stuff in
Uh,
the grave, do you?
I don't think so. No,
No,
I
it's
lost
not on you.
50K.
No, you're good.
That's funny, dude. There's like a 4-man PK. They're all waiting at the entrance.
You guys better watch out.
Yeah, I think I'm done with Callisto anyways. Oh, fuck, I just lost a looting bag note too. That's cringe, dude. Cringe PKers.
You know what? We should get the new prayer book as is, right? Let him hit the 150 damage stacks. Fuck them.
Fuck them, dude. Make it hit harder on PKers too. Add like a
That's what I'm
buff.
saying. You know what? Hey, good point, man. Maybe
Like
just 20
if you've
additional
gotten more
damage
than
per
5
hit.
kills in the past day, PKing, everything deals 20% more damage. Screw you.
There you go. There you go.
And you know what? While you're at it, dude, make worlds instead of 2200 total requirement, make it have 100 IQ plus requirement. That way, there's no PKers. I'm kidding, but I'm trolling. Just so everyone.
Nah, that sounds great to me, man. Nah, I think honestly, the game is in a super healthy way right now. I think that the people who are producing the game for the most part have at least a good idea of maybe what some of the community wants, what some of the things that would work, especially given the fact that our game is just so weird in terms of like how it works, numbers, everything like that. Like the framework that everything is built around. It's like they understand it a lot more than back in the day, right? Because back then it just used to been like Paul and Andrew Gower who like made the ideas and then had a development team come up with things, and then regardless of how broken it was, it just came into the game anyway. Um,
Yeah, they didn't
like
have as many filters as they did today.
exactly. So I think the people who play now are passionate about it. I think that the people who are intimate with the creation of the content to a regardless of how limited it might be, there's an extent there that they recognize how the game functions, how it could function at a higher level. And especially that's another thing too, for the people who are specifically producing and creating the content. I mean, like, I think all of Tob, I mean, I'm sure that there was a lot of collaboration that went into it. But if I'm not mistaken, a lot of the Tob ideas were from Chris Archie. I think a lot of the mechanics in Tob were from Chris. Um, so when you look at it from that perspective, I think Chris for the longest time was a PKer, dude. I did you ever watch Chris Archie videos
Yeah,
back
of
in the day?
course.
Dude,
His like kind of like a series, kind of like Behemoth, but he was like
yep.
mostly
Yeah,
PKing clips.
the OOG.
Yeah,
I got featured on his channel, I think twice.
I never got
Um,
featured. I was never. That's kind of cool though.
yeah, I could send it to you. It was a RuneScape hooker prank call.
Okay, I want to see it now. Send it to me.
Yeah, I got you.
That's funny. Oh, Batman just rated us.
Ooh.
GM. Sorry, we're doing a live podcast right now. We need the link. Yeah, dude, send me the link of that. I want to put it in the description. That's hilarious.
Oh boy. That shit is so cringe, man. Here, hang on. Let me see if I can't find it real quick. Surely I have this shit saved. Hold on.
I'll add the description, but I gotta go now. I gotta go do fucking getting 4 texts.
Really? All right, man. Well, hey, dude, it's super fun talking to you. Thanks for giving me an opportunity. Hopefully, I didn't ramble too much. I mean, like, the whole point of this, but
It's okay. It's the whole point of it. And Heffy doesn't watch it, so don't worry about it.
okay, thank God. I don't have to deal with a heavy backlash.
But dude, we're all like just over 3 hours, almost 3 hours. Holy, that's crazy.
Yeah, man.
We'll
Now I
probably
had fun.
keep going,
Hopefully,
but
yeah, I know.
I don't want to overkill it.
No, it's all good. Hopefully, I mean, hopefully some of that stuff made sense. And again, I think just to finalize a point, I think communication and just talking about like a lot of this stuff is like the most important element of the production of this thing, right? Because that I think is what's going to cultivate the element of fun for it to work out, and then also the element of longevity for the health of the game. And the only thing I care about is being able to play this shit in 20 years because I don't have anything else I want to do with my life. So,
Agreed, dude. I want to be
wait,
still clogging in 20 years. Just like that meme I made in that one video, like 2 slots away from completion.
I gotta, maybe I saw that. I still can't get it out of my head that fucking meme that RNG made back before we were clogging a whole bunch, and it was objects in mirror are closer than they appear.
It was Brown Tree
It was
chasing me.
Brown Tree.
But at that point,
Dude.
when he made the meme, like we were neck and neck. And then Brown Tree went for Tebow and Shadow and when Giga dry on both. So he literally did like 8 months to get 2 slots.
Damn, bro.
And that whole time I was like clogging, and because I had a head start on him in terms of like rating and PVMing, but he had a head start on me in terms of like mini games and clues. But like mini games and clues, they're a lot faster to get clog slots compared to rating. So
yeah, I'm about to I think just send clues honestly, but
they're good. They're really fun. Easy clues are insane for clog. Like you should do like at least over like 1,000 of them.
1,000.
Ideally 2,000.
I still need some for master stuff. I need the trousers. So
you should go send that, dude. It's fun.
True.
And you don't have to like you can stack, maybe do a couple openings, and don't like force yourself to do it either, because then you'll burn.
Right.
It's good AFK content. Like usually I would have done that during the podcast, but we had a Callisto team, so I did 400 Callistos today, dude. I think I might be top page actually. Let me check. Did I get top page? Rank 27.
Pog, dude. What is it? You need 25 for top page, right?
Yeah. I think I'm like 100 kills away.
That's so crazy.
Dude, it's been like a week and a half, dude.
The kill speeds per hour being 76 is nuts.
Yeah, but that's averaged over 5 hours. I went to eat breakfast, did a bunch of clues.
400 kills today. Oh my god.
That's disgusting, dude.
Dude.
This method is cracked, dude.
Oh my god.
Actually cracked. I'm a big fan of it.
I need to go back out there, but it's fine. I want
and
that
the fucking claws of Callisto shitting them out, dude.
Yeah. Let me see your log. Yeah, let's see the log.
4.
Jeez. No hilt yet. I mean, to be fair, you're in 10-man teams, so.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm on drop rate for hilt in like a couple more 100 kill count.
Yeah.
In 200 kills, I'm drop rate for hilt. So I don't really care too much about it, honestly, but like I know I'll get it eventually. I want to do 10,000 Callisto. I'm planning to do an elite clue opening soon too. I'm trying to get over 100.
By the way, here I'm gonna send you something. Really quickly. You asked for this. There you go.
Yo, thanks for raid, Batman. Peace out. Enjoy your food. Wait, let me watch this. Did you link it to the... Oh my god, dude. This is old, bro. Holy... Wait, 1 second.
Yeah, dude.
What time is
Okay,
it? Is the
guys.
clip out?
It's the first clip. Should be. Hold on. Let me clarify
PK
that.
Sephiroth? That's you?
Yeah, that was my old name. PK
Holy,
Sephiroth.
okay. 1 second. I gotta set this up for stream and YouTube.
The fucking
Okay.
dude. Hey, listen. This was the preface this by saying this was the hooker prank calling meta of old YouTube. Okay, so it's cringe as shit.
Alright. Let's watch it.
Okay, guys. So I'm here with my friend Justin. What's up, guys? So basically, what we're going to be doing here is we're going to be prank calling hookers, and what's going to happen is Justin is going to put items in my inventory that I have to reference in the prank call. So hopefully, you guys like the video.
You definitely have the wrong number.
Do I? Oh, that's crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking for someone to stuff my raw chicken into. I mean, really, like, get some of that rock tail.
I guess you better call your mom or something.
Right? Yeah. I mean, I have a golden helmet. And it's a new. It's a golden helmet. It's like a new type of condom. It's like extra strength, like, and it's
What
pure
the
gold
fuck?
too. So like, you know,
I
like,
told
all
you
the
it was
candy
cringy,
strippers
man.
want 'em, you know? I kind of shove that thing on my abyssal whip, and we can get somewhere.
You have a vagina?
No, I put it on my abyssal whip.
No, I think you have a vagina.
No. If you want, you can come over and you can put on this Laripa
Oh
top
my
that I've got, and I mean it's like pretty sexy. It's like little pasties, you know, but like it's a top, but the tits are cut out. So like, you know, I'm gonna see your tits. So I mean, if you want to, you can come over. I mean, that's great. I got this golden.
Dude, why did I
necklace with
send you
diamond in
this?
it
I'm
that
just
goes on
sitting here
it. I call it
cringing,
my-
bro.
I call it my Phoenix necklace.
Oh my
because
Bro, I'm for sure getting...
God.
it gets me fired.
Dude, I'm for sure getting freaking, like, demonetized. I
Dude,
just
you can
realized.
just pull that one out, man. Oh my
I'm
god.
100% getting demonetized.
How long ago
Fuck.
was that? That was That was a
That was
decade
10 years
ago,
ago,
bro.
dude.
That was a decade ago. Oh my god. I should have fucking pre-watched that shit. I said,
Dude, apparently
dude.
you got a bunch of dislikes for this video.
Did I?
Oh, wait, that must have been from drama from, like, other things.
Maybe.
Well done and awesome. I give you props. Honestly, it was really well done. The way you, like, introduced the words, like, you did a good job. It was pretty cringe, but, like...
I know. Thank God I didn't continue down that path. Different person.
I
Still
didn't
a
recognize your
degenerate,
voice,
but-
to be honest. I didn't recognize it. I think it's because your microphone's too good now, so it's...
Really? Oh, it wasn't me then. It wasn't me. Yeah, I don't know why I wanted you to watch
That was
video.
hefty, dude. That was hefty,
That
boys.
is- I think that was Heffy, actually. That definitely has a similar quality. Anyway, bro. Again, yeah, thanks for letting me, I guess, shoot the shit for as long as they did.
Yeah, thanks
I-
for chilling here, dude. This
Yeah,
was
bro.
fun. Do more.
Yeah.
And on that note, take care, lads. I hope you enjoyed working while listening to this. I know a lot of people work while listening to these. Few people were talking to me about it. But yeah, peace out, Girl Scouts. Take care.
Bye.